Okay. All right.
Oh, right. So,
Good.
all right, we're live.
All right.
All right. So, yeah, that was good. That was a good transition. So yeah, we're back, and I can't figure out technology still, as we were just going through that. I for some reason just have the inability to learn technology, and I think that what occurred with that is that I just had you and like other people that knew technology better than me, and then my brain just kind of went, we don't need to put brain power towards that anymore,
Yeah.
and then just kind of kicked it to the curb.
Yeah. No, it's smarter because you just like, why even bother with it? You just realize you're not going to do it. Just whatever. Whenever you need it, you'll just Google. It's like if you need to use a calculator for something. If you ever need to
Exactly.
do it and it's more than like two numbers adding together, then you're just like, I'm never going to learn how to do this again. I'm just
Yeah.
going to Google this.
You're like, what's 342 times like 48? I could probably
Yeah.
figure it out. I could do it. Just, it'd take a minute. But why would I do that when I have a phone with a calculator?
Yeah. It's just that you use the technology every day and still run into the same issues. That's what's a little bit more different. I'm not adding that up all the time like you are, but yeah, so here we are. That part's fine.
Oh God.
Which we
Yeah,
use
I
Discord
just
a lot, and that part's really important too, and you can be able to learn it. And it has
that's
been
the
2 years to almost 3 years of being locked in a house with Discord, and you still don't understand how to use it.
no,
So
I
we're
really
still
don't.
working on it.
It's like it's just clicking, it's so difficult.
Yeah.
It's just I like stuff pops up and you're like find it and I'm like, all right, give me a second. Give me a second. But it's like
It's funny because you make that exact face. It actually is exactly like that. You're like you're
it's
it's
like
like a blank stare where you're like, okay,
because
yeah.
it's just a complete like
Something popped in the bubble in
inability.
the background. That's weird. What was that? And it's like a notification at the side telling you to look here. It's me sending you a message, but you won't see it for like 3 weeks. It'll be
No,
like,
it's
here's something.
yeah, it's just complete. It's just like that like idea of I know that I could figure it out if I wanted to, but I just have you guys and I could just refer to you guys immediately when I have a question. And so what's the point? So it's like but it's like dumb things. Like I'm like when I get on my own, then I'm like, wait, how do I do that? And then I like, go to Reddit. Like Reddit, of course, is like an enabler in this situation too, because I could just
Yeah.
like go to it real quick and learn anything. Same with YouTube. But
One
I
of the
just
best things you could
refuse to
ever
learn.
learn. Google search, and then it leads to a bunch of blog posts and like a bunch of useless stuff. But then you just type in like Reddit afterwards, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, do you have this exact monitor that like for some reason it's running at a certain voltage in your house, and you turned your light on and it went off? Like,
Hmm.
yeah, no, I've had that problem too. That's exactly what it is. No big deal. Case in point, my mouse just before this for some reason was doing a twitchy thing where like instead of being smooth, it would go like
Yeah.
twitch across the screen. And I went, that's weird. It's happened a lot. And I finally actually spent 2 seconds to Google it. And it was because an HDMI cord was loose in like the back of one of my monitors for a mouse that was causing it. Like that doesn't even make sense,
See,
but it
but
worked.
that's the kind of like dumb stuff. Like that's why Reddit is great because Reddit you just go on there and you just be like, man, I have this really obscure, crazy small town. It's got to be a ridiculously like one in a million problem, and then you find it and there's like 15 people that have like different fixes, and it's like you have like a to-do list of like try this one, then try this one, then try this one, and
Yep.
it's like slowly you get to where it's like, oh, that worked for me. I don't know why, but that did.
And the best part is if you really want a quick answer, you just go on there with the wrong answer and then post it, and then someone will immediately be there to correct you. That's also like one of the quickest ways you could do it.
Yeah, yeah, because it's that like desire to just like have to correct, the other person or anything like that. So yeah, no, it's just it's hilarious because I just refuse to learn. Is really what it is. It's like
I'm the
I
problem and
can.
I'm not going to change.
It's what it is.
Good
It's like
American
it's
energy there.
old, not old by any means. Like, by the way, that's one of my favorite things to do. Is like we just turned 26, by the way, for just context for everybody. And my favorite thing is to be like, ah, just getting old, and then just everybody's reaction, just like, you're so young, or something like that, or just ridiculous, or
Or they're like, you
like
have
I
no
told
idea what it's like.
yeah, like I told some guy who was like 80 years old or something like that. I told him I was born in 90. I was like, "Oh, I don't know about that. I was born in 97." And he literally just went he just went fuck. And I was like, "All right." It's like sounds good.
And
Yeah,
97
so
sounds like it's really, really young. And then all of a sudden you start seeing like draft picks where they're like, their years like 2000. And you're like,
well, we're going to
really?
talk about
Aren't you
like
still in
draft
high school?
picks.
I know
Like
that was
yeah,
a
we're
really
gonna
good transition.
Yeah, well,
Boom.
that was a great transition. Yeah, we're gonna talk about draft picks, and it's absurd just how like you're like, oh yeah, that guy. He's like he's been in like like Stetson Bennett, where it's like that dude's just like a grandfather in college at this point, and then you like find out he's like 25 or something, and you're like, oh,
You
you're
start making
like
the argument of like he's too old and nobody's ever gonna take a chance on him, and it's like pointless to even think he's gonna amount to anything. And then you realize you're describing someone your own age, and you're like, oh yeah,
that's my favorite conversation though about sports players in general is the fact that we're like they hit like 31 years old and then depending on what sport it is, especially football, it's like just getting old, you know, their knees are starting to go, they're just not able to do it like they used to, and it's like they're 31. It's like
he's on the wrong side of 30, and but he's been in the
that's the
NFL
my
for like 10 years.
that's one of my favorite lines on the wrong side of 30. And it's like, it's true. Like, athletically, it makes sense. But it's just hilarious to think about the fact that, like, some dude that's like 33 years old who's played for like 12 years, it's like, it's getting old. He's like the old man on the team. And it's like, that dude is not even like, hasn't even hit 35 yet. He's like, you know, oh,
Yeah.
God. Yeah, that's one of my favorite arguments or things about sports when people say stuff like that.
Yeah, it's just and the best part is it's gonna hurt more and more year after year.
Oh, yeah.
To get closer to that, and then eventually it'll be like, oh yeah, he's 29. He's probably got 1 or 2 years left of his prime, and you're
Yep.
just like, all right, okay, I guess.
I mean, we're getting to a point now where we're getting players that are on like their second deals that are like our age, and it's like, oh, it's
Yeah.
like so.
It's Justin
Anyways,
Fields' birthday yesterday or 2 days ago.
yeah, and he's only 24, so it's like we're
No, what? He's no, he just turned 25, right?
he just turned. I thought he just turned 24.
Oh my
I'm
God,
pretty
that
sure he turned
was.
20. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That is shocking.
See,
I actually, I thought I looked at this already, and I thought I saw 24 before his birthday, and I thought it would say 25 now.
see, there it is. Now it's
Wow.
in you.
But he's two
Now it's,
years into the NFL, and he's 24. That is just wild. Why does it seem
yeah.
like that happens so often? Is that there's like, I don't know. Maybe it doesn't happen as often, but it seems like when I look up prospects half the time, they're either like unexpectedly 26 already and just declaring for the draft, or they're like 18 and it's like their
Well,
first year.
Well, it depends. So, like some athletes, so if you don't redshirt and you're a true freshman, you can start, then that's the other thing too, is depending on where your birthday is. Like if you're on the younger side and you're a true freshman, you might be 17, like literally starting the NFL season or your first season in college. And then, you go 3 years and then you're eligible because it's 3 years out of high school. And then all of a sudden, these prospects, I think like James Daniels, I remember if I remember correctly, when he came out of Iowa, he was like 20 years old, like in the
Oh
draft,
yeah.
and it was just because he was on the younger side. And I think he met that 3 years of eligibility, so it was like he was good to and he was good to go. So it's just like, and then you got guys like Stetson Bennett who like redshirted, then got the COVID year, and had I think he had like an injury year in there, and so it's like man's on like year 6 or 7 of college. It's like at this point he's like getting his doctorate while he's in he's like playing. And then there's like that one guy who was a transfer quarterback. Don't remember his name because he's not like relevant, but he's like 29 years old. He's like transferring.
Oh yeah. Is he declaring this year? I feel like I've heard this.
I don't
Or is it?
remember. He just transferred, so he's eligible for another year. So who knows, dude? It's like a grown man just playing.
Wow. That's like what's his face? Was it not was it Hoyer or no, was it somebody else? That was oh no. Another Browns quarterback. What was that dude's name who came out and he was probably
Brandon
like
Weeden.
about yeah, there we go. Okay, Brennan
I say
Weeden.
Brandon Weeden was old too.
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking of. Okay.
Yeah,
And
because
he
they
was way
redshirt and then
older.
they get an extra year of eligibility, and then there's sometimes there's like injury things where like something happens and they're able to get another year of eligibility, and then it just is like, I mean, like Joe Burrow was old and he was 23, 24 when he came out, so it's one of those where like, yeah, it's just it's wild. But then, like I said, then you on the other side you get prospects that are like 20 years old and they can't even have a drink to celebrate them getting drafted. I mean, they'll have a drink, but they can't legally have a drink. Like, you know what
Yeah,
I mean?
they can't have a drink. Wink, wink. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Who's the oldest person that's declaring in this draft?
Is Stetson Bennett declaring? I don't actually.
Yeah.
That's actually a good question. That would be an interesting like little tidbit. You know, an interesting trivia question would be like, what's the oldest person that's ever declared? Well, wasn't there? Because there's guys like in the army, like on the like for Army University, wasn't there like a long snapper that was like 33 years old or something like that?
Yeah, I think so.
There's like
Yeah,
random
Army.
cases like that where the player, yeah, where like there's outstanding circumstances that basically leads them to be able to be eligible.
Yeah,
I can't remember exactly what the case was. I know there was like a long snapper. It was something like completely, like it's not like he was the quarterback and he's like 35 years old and he's like, all right, guys, let's go.
yeah. The first thing that came up when I searched it was Bennett will likely come nowhere close to the quarterbacks who are expected to be taken in the first round of the NFL draft,
Soccer.
even though he did record wins over all three. But
Yeah,
still,
well, you can record wins over. That Georgia team was good enough that like me and you could have potentially recorded wins at a quarterback.
yeah.
Like
I
it,
throw a mean 5 yard out. I could definitely make it that far. So yeah.
I'd say I could throw it like 20 yards. So it's like, as long as they're open, they're gonna be open. I'll heave it downfield and just say screw it and close my eyes and somebody will catch it.
And he did that and they won. So like it was
Yeah.
close enough.
That's what
They
I
just
mean.
said throw it in that general direction and they'll catch it. It's no big
Yeah.
deal. So
So
yeah.
yeah, so yeah, they're it's always fun. College though, quarterbacks coming out. Speaking of Stetson Bennett throwing against those quarterbacks, a couple of those quarterbacks we're going to talk about because that's the big old conversation right now is all the quarterbacks. And personally, I like to scout the quarterbacks and rank them, and I usually have a pretty good idea. Of course, the funny part is I've texted you for years. Like every draft, I've like sent you texts of quarterbacks that I like. And I have record. I don't know where those texts are. I'd have to like look them up. And I have record
I
of
think I
that.
actually do have them. I don't think I've deleted text in like 7 years.
Yeah,
So they're
so I'm
there.
sure you probably have them. And I promise you that I've had good takes in the past. But some of the bad takes have been on currently, like the YouTube videos that we did in scouting reports on players. Not great. Not a great stretch as of late. I mean, did
Which
I
is why
think
they're
Zach
deleted.
Wilson?
They're being
Yeah.
deleted. They're being deleted. No
No,
receipts.
they're gonna stay up there as a monument to all your sins. So that's a good Halo reference. But the Zach Wilson thing, like, did I think that Zach Wilson was just gonna get in there, collect a paycheck, bang a mom, and get out? No, I didn't think that was gonna happen. Like, that was not that was not what I thought was gonna occur.
It's killing me. The,
Which
the top two videos that I end up looking for on the channel are Malik Willis and Kellen Mond.
All right, so Malik
Which-
Willis still is super talented, and what is Kellen Mond supposed to learn behind Kirk Cousins? The dude's like the regular season MVP and the postseason just LVP, least valuable, what I would say.
yeah, yeah.
So
Well,
he actually didn't play well this playoffs, but typically he's not been very good. But
yeah.
either way, I'm usually pretty good about guessing quarterbacks. Like one of my favorite drafts to talk about is like the whole Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. And I sent you a text and said that Baker Mayfield and Josh Allen were going to be the two best out of that draft. Now Baker Mayfield, in my defense, was good, and then he dealt with like three offensive coordinator changes and three offensive changes in like 3 years straight. So like that doesn't help you. That stunts your growth. So here we are. But Josh Allen obviously hit on right there. My biggest thing about the whole Josh Allen thing is that people were like going nuts over I'm just not a person that buys into like the dumb comments that occur. Like,
But they're so
people
much
always say
fun to
like,
make.
I know, but they always make the dumb comments where it's like he didn't have a lot of production in college, and I'm like, yeah, okay, well he could throw it 80 yards from his knees. He's 6'5" and is athletic enough that he can create. So like I don't develop him. Same thing with like DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf, you look at him and you're like, that's a first round wide receiver. And then you hear, oh, he went in the second round, and you're like, why? And it's like, well, they thought maybe he wasn't going to be able to run the route tree. He didn't have an extensive route tree. I'm like, if he's running down the field faster than everybody else, could jump over the guy and catch it. What does it matter if he's running 5 different routes? The man can run flies the entire game. I could care less.
Okay, I remember this happening and I remember this being talked about, and it was always like being memed upon, like the 3 cone drill and everything, and that being terrible and all
Yeah,
that. And I guess I get it, but even at the time, like I was still like, he's like, again, what is the thing that always comes up? Even if he can only run one route, he could run it perfectly and you can't stop it because if you could throw it up to him or you can catch up to him, then like that's it, game over.
well,
Which
the
makes
thing about the
sense now in
draft,
hindsight, of course, but sure.
yeah, I mean, in hindsight, there's so many prospects. I mean, it wasn't like what's Aaron Donald was taken first overall. Like it's like there's in hindsight 2020 on a lot of the draft picks you can see like if you redrafted draft picks it's gonna come up where you're like oh that's very different than whatever else uh is being said about them and everything at the time. But with draft picks, it's like you have to understand that the draft is about drafting players with traits, which is a term you're always going to hear, draft the player with traits. And then it's also about drafting players that have good film or that have film that's at least like and the combine which just occurred, which we'll talk about a bit because there's some people that blew up the combine and I'd like to talk about it. The combine is kind of misleading sometimes because the combine is one of those where people put too much stock in things that occur within it, and of course that gets talked about too. That like you shouldn't put stock in it the way that people do, but people still do. So we have to talk about it. And for me, it's like this: the combine's always like been a thing of like you get two things. You get one, you confirm what you thought about a guy that you're like that guy. When I watch him on film, runs fast. He plays fast he's gonna run well, and then he runs well and he does well, and then you go, that's what I saw in film. That confirms what I thought. And then
Yeah.
there's other times where you go, I don't know much about this player, and then he blows up the combine, and then you are able to go back and watch his film, and you're like, oh, I really should have watched this player closely because this is like crazy. So that's kind of like what the combine for me is always supposed to be about. Now people make it out to be the underwear Olympics where, it's like, oh, we gotta, who runs the fastest, who jumps the highest, that's what matters. And it's like, well, it's like you draft for traits, which is the combine, and then
Yeah.
you also match that with like their film production, whatever.
So you're talking about like Zach Wilson?
Ah, yeah, I mean Zach Wilson's a perfect example of what I was just talking about with quarterbacks like buying in and everything like that. Zach Wilson had that absurd throw where he was like fading to his left. Everybody knows it because it's the one that literally got him, the number 2 overall pick. He was like fading to his left and threw it like across his body and threw it like 60, 65 yards on a line, perfectly hit him in stride. It was absurd. One of
Yeah.
those throws that you're like, geez, that guy's ridiculous. But then the thing with Zach Wilson though is I also felt like he had like the attitude to take on like a roster that was not very good, which like if you're drafting in the top 5, you're not good. So
Yeah.
I always like expect that. But I just didn't expect Zach Wilson to just like he's one of those cases that just did not translate like at all. Like just nothing like
Did you see all
he,
the tweets and stuff like that? I know that it's like obvious and they're gonna say it anyways, but like everybody on the Jets is like pining for Aaron Rodgers right now and like tweeting
yeah.
after it, which I know like of course that's gonna happen, but it also it feels bad at the same time because he's like still on the roster and it's just like yep, no, we're completely gone, you're done. It's
Yeah, but they
funny.
gave him I mean they gave him a solid 2 years of.
Oh yeah, I
You
don't
can't
feel bad for him. The situation's just kind of funny because then he's just sitting there and they're just like, oh yeah, like there's this guy who's not here, but we're like, oh boy, I really hope he gets here. Then we actually have a chance,
Well,
which
and a
is
guy like
great.
that, he'll get a second shot somewhere. There's going to be an opportunity. Like, it happened with Marcus Mariota. He's had several opportunities to start again. It happened with
Yeah,
Mitch Trubisky. He literally got to start in Pittsburgh. Like it happens. He's going to get another starting job somewhere, and it's just what he does with that starting position. It's probably not going to go well, but.
yeah, yeah. I guess I don't know. I guess a desperate team could as like a backup, and then eventually like at one point, but hard to imagine. I don't know. It's probably not going to be for a while. Do you think he stays there, like as a
I
backup?
I think he stays there as a backup for his rookie contract, and I obviously they're not going to pick up his 5th year, and then it's one of those where like in 2 years he's going to be gone, and then he's going to be a perennial backup at the worst because people are going to be like, listen, the dude could throw it, he's super talented. At the worst case scenario, he's our backup, and he needs to come in for one game.
Yeah,
So like he's gonna have a career as a backup. Same with like Mitch Trubisky. Like he's gonna have a career as a backup for the rest of time, just because of athletic traits and everything. And he's Mitch Trubisky's definitely more serviceable than Zach Wilson, at least as of now. But he's gonna have a backup position. I think he'll stay there for 2 years because there's nobody that's gonna trade for him. And I doubt that they're gonna cut him because like there's just no reason to if
I have
he's
no
like a
idea what his
reasonably.
guarantees are like or anything. Like, I don't know if they're really going to save that much money. I know he's like the number 2 pick, so there's got to be like a decent amount of money there, but they have a bunch of
Yeah.
young guys right now, anyways.
Well, and it's not like they're strapped for cap, so it's one of those where like they can eat a little bit of money to have him as a backup. Like it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
And you, if you're the Jets, you kind of hope that maybe if you do get Aaron Rodgers and you keep Zach Wilson on the roster, that maybe Zach Wilson picks something up from Aaron Rodgers for once and then leave. So
That's
I have a
true.
feeling he'll stay.
If you only maybe if Rodgers, and just thinking he does go there, if he does, um, I wonder if I don't know, he only stays like a year or two. I mean, that still is possible, I guess. I didn't really think about that, but they would hope in like the best case scenario that he'd be able to stick around and be, I don't know, decent. That's hard. I don't know if they could salvage that. Like it's hard to go from being that bad and like completely trading for a new quarterback and then even thinking about in the future, like maybe we can make this work. But I mean, you have to, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those where Aaron Rodgers is not a long-term plan, so it's like maybe you're hoping that that pick. Well, the thing is GMs and stuff like that and teams don't want to be not let down, or they don't want to be wrong. Let's put it that way. Nobody wants to be wrong, obviously. So they don't want to be wrong on the fact that the number 2 overall pick, sucked. So
Yeah.
it's one of those where I could see them giving him a second chance maybe later on after a couple of years, of learning the 2 years learning behind Aaron Rodgers. I'm assuming Rodgers is going there because it's one of those where like he's either going there or he's staying in Green Bay. I don't know what he's doing, but it's one of the two.
Did you see all the
Because
insanity of like tracking exactly where the Jets at and they're going into like a restaurant or whatever with like the owner and all this stuff? It was pretty funny. It was funny to track.
well, because they were talking about it and they're like, technically the Packers have like, obviously they still hold his contract and everything like that, and like they wouldn't want another team sniffing around, but they're like done with him. Like the amount of comments that I've heard, and I'm not a Packers fan, nor do I listen to any Packers media, and I've still heard comments about the fact that Jordan Love's ready. Jordan Love's ready. We want Jordan Love. He's going to be our starter. He's ready to take over. And then it's like, you guys do realize you have Aaron Rodgers still like on the roster. Like you have to do something about that first. But
Yeah,
they have to eat so much money though. That's the problem because they're idiots and they give him that massive contract. But that's
it's
another
like
story.
56 or 57 mil like next year, I think is like the cap hit, I think. Like that's
Yeah,
actually
which
what they incur in the year, which is ridiculous. What is the cap this year? Like 230 mil or something, or is that?
yeah, it's like 231 or something. It's something like that. But I mean, the thing with eating the cap though is like maybe next year would be the best year for them to eat the cap if they're going to test Jordan Love because it's one of those where you can get him for the next 2 years still on his rookie deal because you get that fifth year option. So it's one of those where that is probably honestly a good like it's probably good to just eat that money over the next 2 years. So you wouldn't like it wouldn't be the end of the world if Jordan Love balls out the next 2 years and then you got to sign him an extension. It's going to end when Green Bay doesn't have you know Aaron Rodgers is dead cap on their roster.
Yeah,
So
and then I
what
think
is the cap at?
yeah, so I was just trying to check up that was on here. So total cap, what is the total cap space? Oh, I'm looking for the actual like for the league.
Yeah, the cap
Assumes a
number.
$224 million, $224 million, 800,000. Okay, so yeah, and
Okay,
the Packers are at, well,
they're
I mean,
not
as
great.
of right now,
they're
yeah,
they're pretty okay. That's not actually that bad. It's not as
guess
bad as I thought it
17
was.
mil. Well, I'm sure if you look into this a little bit, okay, yeah. So what is it? He's got signing bonus, base salary. What else we got here? Oh, dead cap, dead cap for
Oh,
2023. That can't be right, right? Okay, if he's a post June 1st cut. Okay, it currently says, because I know it's not on screen,
yeah,
$99 million,
31
$99.8 million,
dead cap.
and 14% of the cap hit. Okay, but the
I
cap
guess
hit I
because
know
that's
is
what
all
they
that
owe him
matters.
next year, and the next. I guess that's what they owe him the next 2 years. So that's like his dead cap if you cut him.
Yeah, I think so. So there's 17 million on the red already. Bakhtiari is the next one. Yeah, the dead cap. I don't. That's interesting. I wonder how that's calculated exactly. Because out of the gate, that's even crazier than anything I've seen. But I mean, yeah. Regardless, it's gonna
Yeah,
be
the money
monstrous.
situation in the NFL, the NFL is like a freaking. It's gymnastics. They can do whatever they want. I like the fact that the Saints, being in the complete red that they are, were able to sign Derek Carr. Just absurd. Like just the salary cap exists, but it's kind of like a loose thing. Like it's just like
Yeah.
we need cap space. Let's just convert, actual cap hit into signing bonus, and then they get the money, now, and then we can go ahead with this. Which
I
I know,
don't.
like the team has to have the money, like the actual, like the thing about it is the team actually has to have the money, equity or whatever you want to call it. I can't think of the word. to be
Mhm.
able to actually pay it out right now, when they convert that money into like signing bonuses.
Yeah.
But it's just always weird how they always play just gymnastics with the cap, where they're just like, all right, well, we need to do this. We'll cut this guy. We'll lower this guy's thing. We'll give him a higher signing bonus. We'll convert this to that, and all of a sudden, boom, we've got 30 more million in cap space, and you're like, how?
Yeah, I don't see. I like. I don't think it is crazy, but I don't think it actually needs to be changed yet. At the same time as like something else with like the NBA, like with the luxury tax and everything, and if you have the money, you could just like abuse it. Because
Yeah,
I think it's like water in like a rubber hose. That like the money's still in there no matter what, but like you could squeeze it at certain points and it can go different places in different years and everything. But like it still gets paid and it still gets incurred no matter what. There's no
yeah.
escaping that eventually, which is cool. That's how it should
Well,
be.
that's the whole thing of it's just like creating the contracts in order for flexibility. That's why guarantees on contracts is like the biggest thing. Like whenever you hear a contract, it's always like, all right, what's the guarantees look like?
Yep.
And like when are the guarantees? Because it's like if it's a 4-year contract and the guarantees are over the first 2 years, well then the last 2 years are basically if you're playing unbelievably well and the team doesn't need the money, you're going to continue playing for
Case in
them.
point, Daniel Jones's contract exactly, which
Yeah,
is over the
Daniel
first
Jones
two
is
years.
God, Daniel Jones's contract, dude, man, it's just like Daniel Jones's contract is a perfect example of you need like quarterbacks are just a dime a dozen in the NFL, and when you have one that's somewhat serviceable, this is what happens. He's kind of giving me the vibe of like Kirk Cousins, like where like Kirk Cousins. It's just I don't know how Kirk Cousins has made like $300 million, but that man just continues to rake in money.
Well, because I mean, like, besides the fact that he's like pretty consistent, I guess, in like what he gives,
Yeah,
he's almost never gotten hurt, and he's also gone on the franchise tag like every single time he's been able to and bet on himself, which could have blown up in his face. Like that, I mean, that is part of it. It could have gone wrong, but the
yeah.
contract they gave Daniel Jones actually like, yeah, it seems crazy at first or whatever, but I mean, yeah, I don't know, it's 2 years. They need a quarterback. Yeah, it's a lot of money, I guess, but I felt like it was going to be worse. I thought they were going to be tied for like 3 or 4 years, but if all the guarantees in the first 2 years, that's good for him because he at least is
Mhm.
going to walk away with over $100 million after his first contract, no matter what happens. And also, like, if, yeah, like you said, if they have money and he's actually playing good, then they either re up him or they keep it. But like, I'm
Yeah.
surprised. I thought they were going to get completely fleeced over on that, but that's actually it's not bad. Of course, like the first thing, like you said, is to be like, oh my God, he got so much money and it's over this many years. That's ridiculous. But like you said, the only thing that actually really matters is the guaranteed money because that's everything else is like paper money. Doesn't really matter.
Well, it's like if you look at Geno Smith's contract, Geno Smith's contract is very much like I think he's cap hits like 25 million a year, which is not crazy for a quarterback, especially if you think he's like a Pro Bowl. Well, he is a Pro Bowl level quarterback. I mean, he got in the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, by
Uh,
definition. So is
but
Trubisky.
it's yeah,
Doesn't
all
mean as
right,
much anymore. Let's say with all
but
pros. Let's go with
that
that.
means different. Yeah, that's very different meanings in this situation. But yeah, it's Geno Smith though his contract is a perfect example where it's 25 million I think is his cap hit, and I think his actual guarantees is relatively tame for what the contract looks like. And then ultimately it's like he's able to earn like 30 to 35 million in incentives, which is basically them saying like, last year seemed kind of like a fluke. We'll see how well you do over the next year or two. And if you're actually playing at that same level for the next 2 or 3 years, well, then yeah, you'll make a full 105 million. But, if it ends up dipping, in your play, well, then you're not going to get those incentives, which then
Yeah.
the contract basically becomes like a 2-year, $50 million deal, which is not crazy.
Yeah. And I think that, I mean, I didn't really think there was going to be like a whole lot of tension with that contract, anyways, because I feel like I mean, it's rare when you actually feel like a team did like a player a solid, but like
Mm.
he went from he was a backup and like a journeyman for like 6-ish years or something after he got his jaw broken, and like started out as like a I don't know, I think he was a second round pick, wasn't he? Something like
No,
that.
yeah, I think he was a first overall. Oh, I think he was a first round pick because I know he came out of
Yeah,
West Virginia and he had a lot of hype. I remember that draft because I remember him because I think he was.
second round in the
Oh, he was in the second
2013
round
draft.
because it
Okay.
wasn't that the not to throw salt in the wound, but isn't that the same draft? Because he was throwing the ball to Kevin White, wasn't he? And that was the
Yes, I
problem.
think so. I
God,
think that yeah, I think that was the case, but yeah,
not to reopen wounds, but
I don't know. But I think like I don't know. I wasn't expecting that to go on like super long, and at the same time, like Yeah, he did play really well. He kind of fell off like towards the second half of the season and like it wasn't as great.
Yeah.
But I mean, like that's as close as I think you're gonna get to like a team friendly contract where they both feel like they won on both sides. Because like I feel like if in his position he's like, oh, incentive laden, like that's fine, I'll take that. There's
Yeah,
enough
because you're betting on
guaranteed there.
yourself.
Yeah, but it's not like completely robbing you blind at the same point too. Or if like he gets injured, like he's ruined. Like he's obviously like he's pretty set. So
Well, yeah,
it's interesting.
40 million full and guaranteed at signing. So at the very, very worst case, he's getting 40 million.
Yeah,
And then if you're like, if you play, well enough, you'll make, 60, 75 million of that contract. And then if you play, up to that contract and even more, well then yeah, you'll be in that ballpark of, the 105 million that your, full contract is expected if you do. So it's one of those where, yeah, I think it's just like, it's not a bad contract. It's good team friendly type deals, but also giving the player like that's why incentivized deals like that is really kind of like a combination of listen, you haven't produced that well in the past, so we're kind of betting on the fact that we hope that you become what you continue to be, but like if you don't, well then we kind of we're not killed by this. And then you're looking at the contract going, well, I played that well. I'm betting on myself to continue playing that well. So it's yeah, like you said, it's a win-win.
yeah. No, it's
But
interesting. I'm glad they actually got that, and that is also why I know we'll get to it at some point. But like the Seahawks are really interesting for the draft. I'm curious if they actually do anything crazy, or if they just end up like kind of reloading with Gino. It's,
yeah, well, here is it's a perfect transition. So, transitioning into the draft, that is why I think that actually takes them out of the quarterback run this year. Because, in my opinion, what that means is that what you're probably going to get is them trying to go for a quarterback next year if it doesn't work out with Gino this year. Because then next year they can have the quarterback sit behind Gino for another year. So, because this is kind of like a 2 year deal if you're really thinking about it, as in like he's probably if you're expecting Gino to bounce back to his old self and not play as well as he did last year, well then it's probably just a 2 year deal. And usually with a 2 year deal, you kind of play it out this year. He balls out, then you move forward with him. He doesn't ball out, well then you draft the quarterback, you have him sit behind Gino for another year, and then then that contract ends and you move swiftly into the new regime.
yeah,
So, but I think that takes them out of the running for quarterback for at
okay,
least this year. Puts them into the square. Like I think they need a defensive player. Now they also could be a trade up position too, depending on if they want to get more picks because they want to build around this draft because they don't want it just depends on if they fall in love with any prospect. Obviously besides a quarterback, but
yeah.
it's interesting at least
It's an
because they're
interesting
sitting there.
top five spot, especially thinking about like what they were probably imagining when they traded that pick too.
Yeah.
But to be there and like still have competent quarterback play. I don't know. That's there. I don't know. I keep on thinking of Seattle as being somewhere around like 8 or 9, like where Carolina's at, and you
Mhm.
just remember they're at like top five right behind Indy is interesting. I just
Well, that's
I don't
why
know.
I say if you get a quarterback that falls, like an Anthony Richardson or something like that, that falls to 5, and they trade back, like if what I think is occurring is that they want to see how Gino goes this year and then draft the quarterback next year if he doesn't play well, or they might just want to draft a quarterback next year regardless. Then trading back makes sense if they're not in love with the prospect because then they can do similar to what the Bears are going to do or hopefully going to do is get picks for next year and then trade up for a quarterback if needed. So
Yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised if they were now kind of a good trade spot for, a quarterback, depending on, what you kind of hear closer to the draft is what they want to go with.
yeah. If they were gonna go defensive player, like, and they actually do stay in the top five, are they just trying to like hope that like Anderson falls or
No,
like
I would expect it would be like a Miles Murphy, Tyree Wilson, like something in that ballpark where they're like it would have to be one of those where like they just love like they think one of those prospects is like that's available is in like that like upper echelon of prospects this year because like the idea around the draft is that there's usually like a few guys that you're like okay this is on our board is can't miss and if they're available maybe you want to draft them but if they're not available or whoever that is that you think value wise isn't available there then then you fall down to okay well now we're in the next echelon of players prospects then we can trade back because we'll just end up somewhere in there and end up with a guy that we like in that area, you know.
Yeah. What do you think about the? I don't know if Mel Kiper has ownership over it, but I think I always get to see it referred to as that. But the like the draft value chart or whatever, where there's like a certain point value that's added on to like certain
Oh,
picks and all that.
I
Do you
think
think
that
that
was
holds
actually
merit?
wasn't that the Jimmy Johnson? I thought it was Jimmy Johnson,
Yes.
the ex-coach of Cardinals, the Cowboys. Jesus. I'm pretty sure it was Jimmy Johnson's draft value. Yeah, where it was like the first overall pick is like absurdly valued high compared to everything else, which is, that's how it goes.
Yeah, they put it at like, well, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, this is
It's
interesting. 3,000 points, and then like the second overall pick is 2,600, so like a 400 point increment till you get to five, and it only goes down by 100 points.
Yeah, then well then I mean then you're at half. Once you hit seven, you're at half. The value. I so here's the thing. That's a good way to go, but the thing is quarterbacks are the gold standard. So it's one of those where if you've got
They
three
break it a little
quarterbacks,
bit.
yeah, if you have next year, for example, if you hold the number one overall pick next year, if say this was this like the draft that we're having right now was next year's draft and the Bears had the first overall pick, oh my God, three first round picks would be like the going rate. Like it would be like, all right, you want one of these quarterbacks, three first round picks, make it four if you really want them. Like if you're really trading up, like
Can
it
you
would be
remind
the
me who that
going
is?
rate.
That's or the for next year? Who
Yeah,
would be
because
the
it's
top
Caleb
three?
Williams and Drake May. Is that his name? I can't remember. I haven't scouted them yet.
Okay.
But Caleb Williams, I've seen him play, and God, dude, it's like watching. It's literally like I know this gets thrown around a lot, but it's like watching Mahomes. Like it's just he doesn't have the same arm strength, obviously, because Mahomes is just, but it's like the same like just gets into trouble, somehow figures it out, gets breaks out, go either runs for 15 yards or he's able to find a receiver downfield. He's just absurd like that, where he's just unbelievable, and he's got another year of eligibility, so
Hmm.
or another year before he's even eligible for the draft. So he could get better. So it's one of those where like if he plays as well as he has been, like next year's first round pick is going to be absurdly highly valued for
Well,
whoever has it.
yeah. Hopefully, we're not even gonna be. Hopefully, we're not even gonna be worried about that. I mean, like the only thing
Exactly.
I hear when you say that is that like Marvin Harrison will get pushed down the draft board, which is more interesting to me and more realistic. So that's the plus side I see of that.
Yeah, I think next year Marvin Harrison's probably a top seven pick. So I would
Yeah.
think you'd have to trade back up into the top seven to get him.
Yeah.
I because I know there's a left tackle out of oh God, where is he? He's is that Notre Dame? Notre Dame have a left tackle that's huge. I can't remember exactly, but anyways, yeah, no, next year's draft is going to be insane. But I guess the draft value to me just depends on who's in the draft. So like right now, Bryce Young to me is a guy that's like which we can get into our my player comps and stuff, a little bit of scouting right now. I'll probably have better like I'll probably want to do some scouting videos on them, like actual videos where I break them down entirely,
Hmm.
or what I like about him, what I think. But this is just kind of my initial, what my feelings are about all three players, having watched them play, watch every throw and games and stuff. No, my number one quarterback is obviously Bryce Young. I feel like I say obviously, but I feel like with certain teams, I'm ranking them without the idea of like I need to take them for my team, kind of thing. So it's like obviously people are considering his size, people are considering whether he'll be hurt, or maybe they just fall in love with the prospect. Because that's the thing with quarterbacks is all it takes is a team to just fall in love with them, and then all of a sudden, that's their number one guy. They want to get the number one pick because of that. So Bryce
Yeah.
Young to me is the number one quarterback on this board. I actually comped him. Everybody keeps calling him like mini Mahomes and stuff. I actually comped him to
So
Josh
lazy.
Allen. I know. I actually comped him to Josh Allen, and the reason why I get it, obviously not the same size, obviously not the same arm strength, but like everything else just feels like Josh Allen to me. Like I'm watching him, like even the way he's standing up in the pocket, like even his footwork in the pocket just feels like a like just a young version of Josh Allen. Uh,
Yeah.
and even watching Josh Allen now, he looks a lot like him. Like the creativity, the ability to create, the ability to find receivers downfield when the pocket kind of collapses, having enough athleticism to like make things happen. Like it's not like Josh Allen's athleticism is gonna blow you away, but he's definitely athletic and fast enough to get some yards, make things happen, stay proactive in the backfield when the play breaks down, things like that. That's what I really kind of comp him to Josh Allen because it feels like the same kind of vibe. Like it's not at Mahomes level because I just don't like Mahomes is just like Caleb Williams to me next year is like a guy that I would act like I would be like okay comping to Mahomes, but I'm not giving that comp out to just anybody. So Bryce Young in this is just Josh Allen to me, just a smaller version. Obviously not the same arm strength, but and then if you want to talk about the size, to me it's one of those where if he's smart with the ball, because obviously we're in a league where you're not allowed to breathe on the quarterback half the time. So really, what it is he's as long as you are coaching him up to play smart, where he's not going to have those Josh Allen moments where he's trying to, make too much happen and he's taking massive hits because that's gonna hurt Josh Allen later on in life. We saw it with Cam Newton. That's what happened with Cam Newton is he took so many hits, over the course of his prime that Cam Newton the last couple of years has been like this a sad thing to watch. You
Yeah.
know, so
Which I thought was interesting too, and not like to derail the topic too much, but
yeah,
there's like I think they did like I don't know if it was like a study or whatever, but it was actually like more common for quarterbacks to be hurt in the pocket than actually running. Which like the number one thing you hear all the time, like especially if like for Fields or anything, is that he's a running quarterback, blah blah blah. He'll get hurt and stuff more often.
mhm.
And I think they did already adjust for like the first thing you'd think of, which is like there's obviously more pocket quarterbacks than running quarterbacks. So like that would skew the
Yeah. So
average.
volume versus yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I think part of that goes to the fact that like when you're in the pocket and you take a hit from the blind side or something like that, or like, you saw with Brock Purdy, for example, where Brock Purdy being in the pocket, went to go throw that ball and the guy whacked his arm in such a way that he basically, he tore the ligament in his elbow. It's the same kind of concept that like freak injuries occur in the pocket because you're not paying attention to anything. Like, whereas if you're running, like yeah, you might, but you're gonna like see the guy coming at you that you're gonna take a hit from.
Yeah.
Like
You're
it's
usually
not.
not getting run down from behind either. Like you're
Yeah,
looking
you're
at
not
what's happening.
exactly. You're not getting like just leveled from behind you because the left tackle missed the block.
Yeah.
So it's one of those where yeah, it's a little misleading. And Lamar Jackson has taken very little hits as far as like his play style goes. So it's one of those where I just you kind of take it for whatever it's worth. It's yeah, he's smaller. His play weight, he weighed in at 204. His play weight's going to be like 190. So he's going to be smaller. He's going to be thinner. But it's one of those where the traits, the upside, and everything on him is pretty darn high as a quarterback. So you go ahead and take him if he's your guy and you think you can coach him up and teach him to play comfortably, kind of like Russell Wilson with not taking hits and stuff like that. Well, then I think he's the number one quarterback on my board.
And now we just
And
have to
then,
figure out what the Bears are going to get for the team that wants to draft him. Because if you, I don't know if
well,
you got time today to watch pardon my take interview with Poles and
no, I have
Eberflus.
not.
Okay, there's a
I've
part in
I've heard
there.
all of the quotes from Ryan Poles though.
Okay, well, this isn't a quote from Ryan Poles, or I guess it kind of is, but there's a part in it, and I think in like the beginning where and it was like kind of weird because I can't tell if it was like he's just really like it was if Poles is really being funny,
Yeah,
but
just playing him up.
like or yeah, like Big Cat was like talking about him and he's like very seriously is like, yeah, but like what about the part where he talked about like what the Raiders were like in calls with, and he's like, we're not really trying to discuss anything else like that. And he was joking, but then like he eventually brought it around and realized it like a couple seconds later. But Poles was like completely deadpan and was just like, oh yeah, like we're not really trying to discuss those too much outside. Something like that was like dismissive. But like he
Yeah,
was trying to just joke around and it was like for a second and then he put the mask right back on and like brought it back. But I don't know. Maybe it was just that it was out of the norm, and I thought it was kind of funny to see that for a moment because it was like the first thing he opened up with in the interview, and he was like, "Whoa!" Like taken aback. There wasn't like a warm up period between then, but
that's funny.
um, Devontae
Yeah,
Adams and a bunch of other picks and stuff. That's what hopefully it is.
yeah. I mean, we'll go through my like trade packages for the first overall pick because this. We're gonna sell the quarterbacks first. That's what we're gonna do, and then we're gonna sell why you should trade up for one of these quarterbacks.
Okay, sell me on CJ Stroud then.
Yeah, so CJ Stroud, my comp for him, which is kind of funny, is Matt. I have Matt Ryan slash Trevor Lawrence. The reason why is because I think Trevor Lawrence is who I comped him to is Matt Ryan because I think that they're in the same kind of vein. Where like, is that a diss against Trevor Lawrence? No, that's not a diss against Trevor Lawrence or CJ Stroud. Matt Ryan was an MVP who was in the Super Bowl. Granted, Super Bowl didn't go the way that he wanted it to. But either way, they're both in the Super. He was in the Super Bowl, had an MVP season. He was an unbelievable player for a good chunk of his career. Upper echelon of quarterbacks. So it's not like it's a bad thing. But the reason why I comp him to them is because with like Trevor Lawrence more so than Matt Ryan, he's mobile enough. He showed that in the Georgia game that he's mobile enough that he can kind of create, when things go. He's more of a pocket passer than, Bryce Young, for instance. Not saying Bryce Young isn't a pocket passer because I hate when people are like, well, you're saying he's not a pocket passer then. It's like, no, CJ Stroud is just more of a passer. Bryce Young's more of an improviser. But CJ Stroud, I think he's mobile enough to kind of create and run when he needs to. He's accurate. Accuracy is one of the biggest things. You go back and watch Trevor Lawrence's combine; it's the same thing that CJ Stroud went through, where it's like he's hitting every single receiver like right in the perfect pocket of throwing, and it's like you're just watching him and you're like, yeah, that guy's he's good. Same with the with Trevor Lawrence last year is you just look at him and you're like he's NFL ready. NFL ready meaning you can put him in starting day one, and yeah, you're gonna have some growing pains, but he's not gonna have a learning curve, like some prospects will. So for me, that's like he's number two behind Bryce Young, but it's only because Bryce Young has that like little bit of magic creativity that just like you can't teach. That just kind of flows out of them randomly and it just pops up like this. So it's one of those where, uh yeah, like he's CJ Stroud's very good. He's ready to go. You plug him in day one. He's going to be a good quarterback in the NFL. He'll have growing pains, same as Trevor Lawrence has had a little bit here and there. Same with Matt Ryan when he came out. But I think that they could all three of Matt Ryan, Trevor Lawrence, CJ Stroud. I think at the end of their careers, you could look at them all pretty much the same, where they're all going to be in that like upper top 10, top 15 of quarterbacks in the NFL probably for a majority of their career, and you're not going to be unhappy drafting that guy. Like
Yeah.
obviously you want like the Mahomeses of the draft, but it's Mahomes is Mahomes. You're not going to get Mahomes. So people need to stop throwing that out there. So in
So
that
as a person who
scenario,
doesn't watch college as much, is CJ
yeah.
Stroud more of like a super volume passer or a play action or a deep bomb or like a screen guy?
So
Like,
he went to Ohio State, which I love Ohio State. That's my favorite. I'm a huge Ohio State fan. So
hey, where's your jerseys
Ohio,
at?
yeah, that's Eddie George.
Okay.
So
There. Okay.
yeah,
Good, good, good.
gotta love Eddie George. But so he's Ohio State runs an offense that is we like to throw the ball deep, but we also like to run a crap ton of screens and a crap ton of quick little throws on the outsides to try to spread the team, the defense out, and then we kind of hit those big shots. So it's not a lot of like I guess it's not a lot of like mid range, where you're going down and tearing apart an offense or tearing apart a defense piece by piece. It's like little outs to get the player in in space in rhythm and kind of let them create. And then when you need to go for the deep shot, that's kind of that's kind of how Ohio State runs it. So he didn't really get to show off his ability to just kind of carve up a defense. I mean, he did against Georgia a lot, and he has in the past against other teams. But Georgia's the game where you could really go and watch him actually just start being the quarterback that I think he can be in the NFL. So that's why he's my number two. He's not number one. He's not Bryce Young, but he is like it's like if you had to put them in tiers, it's like that's the top tier. It's like those two are in the top tier because both of them are NFL ready, good to go. They're going to be like they have high ceiling, low floor kind of thing.
Do you see any scenario in which like I know, I guess you could, because you could say like any team would get sold on a different player or whatever. But do you see
Yes,
any way like CJ Stroud actually goes above Bryce Young?
I think him. I think Bryce Young, and I think my next quarterback on my list. Either one of them could go number one. It just depends on a team falling in love with them. Which brings me to my number three quarterback, which is Anthony Richardson. That dude lit up the combine, and it's funny because he didn't need to light up the combine. If you actually watch the film, he's absurdly talented. He's got an arm that's very, like, I say better than average, which is not like a diss against him. Like there's just levels to it, like like again, Josh Allen, Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers for a good chunk of his career, guys that just have an absurdly large arm. He's not that, but he's close enough that you're like he's better than average. He's going to make throws that are going to impress you. And then he's also got the ridiculous, just absurd athleticism. I comped him to Justin Fields, and the reason why I comped him to Justin Fields, everybody says Cam Newton, and I kind of get the Cam Newton, I get it, but I feel more Justin Fields because if you watch him play, he very much reminds me of Justin Fields, because he just is the look first read, second read, nothing's there, my line's collapsing, I'm going. And when he goes, he creates, and he's fast and he's athletic and he's somehow bigger than everybody else in the field. Like same with Justin Fields being 6'3", 230. I mean, he's 6'4", 244, and he's running a 4.44 at the combine, which is just absurd, which is very much just like a hair slower. I think what did Fields run, like a 4.41 or something like that, or he ran in the
Yeah.
4.4s too. So it's like he's either just as fast or just a hair slower in the 40, but same kind of speed, same kind of just able to go. It's just one of those where he's just absurdly talented. Now, the thing with him is I don't think he has the same like development that Justin Fields had when he came out. So I don't think he's on the same level as him. I think he's a developmental prospect. I think he's a guy that's probably going to need another year. And it's not like a knock as like a, you know, because that's another thing too is people say like, oh, he's a developmental, he's a project, is what they'll say.
So
I
is
don't think he's a
Mahomes.
prod. Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's a project. I think he just needs time. Like I think he just needs experience. Like he needs to play. He needs reps. That's really what it is. So it's one of those where I think you draft him because you see the unbelievable talent and you just go, I can use that. I can mold that.
So it sounds like you're a reps versus clipboard holder guy. If there's a quarterback who's coming onto the field after being drafted and, they're
Well,
like, oh, he needs to sit for a while or needs to play.
it depends because like he's the type of guy that has the confidence. You hear him talk, especially at the combine. If you heard him talk, he's the kind of guy that's like you could just tell that I don't think he'll be bothered by messing up. Like Sam Darnold, for instance, was a guy that like he just never got into a rhythm, and the issues that he had just never got fixed, and it never felt like he was like learning from them. It just felt like he kept making them, and then he just was like it's like he's like beating himself, up about it kind of thing. Like I don't think that's an issue with Anthony Richardson. I think he is a guy that like he will develop with the reps versus like worrying about stunting his growth because he's playing on a terrible team.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I'm at. It's like if the guy is the type of guy that needs to spend that year learning behind somebody, like for example, like Love in Green Bay, I don't think he would have been good by getting reps. Like he was not, he was less developed even than Anthony Richardson, and I think it's one of those where he needed to sit behind guys, or sit behind Rodgers for those years, and obviously we still haven't even seen him, so who knows? But it's one of those where he's the type of guy that needed to sit behind Anthony Richardson. I think you plug him in, and even if you're bad, I think you're fine because I think he'll play through it. He'll learn. Same with Justin Fields. I mean, Justin Fields has not played on a good team this year, but we feel
This
like he
year,
grew.
the year before, the year
Yeah,
before that,
I know,
really.
but last year is kind of like a toss because you're just like it was just so poorly run. But at
Oh, I
least
agree.
this year, like you could see development. That's kind of what I mean. It's like Justin Fields didn't look stunted by the development this year because his team was bad. Same with how I feel with Anthony Richardson. Now the thing is any one of these three quarterbacks, in my opinion, can go number one because you either go Bryce Young because you love his creativity
Come
and
on,
just
you
that
can't
it
see Anthony Richardson going first over. Really? Over Bryce Young?
there's been a lot of talk about it because the idea is that you go okay, but I if you look at Anthony Richardson, you're like I think he has the talent, the arm, and I think he just needs to be coached up. And coaches in the NFL, especially GMs, stuff like that, they all have egos. They all believe that they can figure out something that the other person couldn't or another coach couldn't. A lot of those guys do. So all it's going to take is one team to be like, no, 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 we think we can make him into a star. We like his, we're a little skittish on Bryce Young's size. And, we don't know, CJ Stroud played at Ohio State, and we don't really know, how he can do on his own. But Anthony Richardson, we saw the talent, we saw he's got the size, he's got the athleticism. We can develop that. And then they fall in love with
Yeah. So you're saying he can go to the Lions at 6, maybe? Or I'm sorry, or I'm saying the Lions could trade up and get him. The first thing I was going to say was the Seahawks, but then you said needs to play immediately. I don't know. I guess they're both in the same sort of situation, but
Yeah, I think he needs to play. I think he needs reps. I think he's a Justin Fields where I don't think he'll be hurt by playing on a bad team, but he'll grow. Like I think it's one of those where by the end of the season you're going to be like, man, that was a rough year, but Anthony Richardson looked good going through the year.
the Titans then, if they
That
sell everybody out.
that would be the team. That would be a solid.
Hmm.
That's the thing is that's where so that and by the way, because we're gonna get into this conversation here in a minute, because
Uh-huh.
you're like kind of leading into it. You're really trying to get into it. But
Well,
I
I'm
have
just
one
looking
more
out a little. I'm
quarterback.
looking out a little bit to see where these guys might go because this
I
is new
know.
information to me.
I got one more quarterback on my list, which is the one that I think Mel Kiper said was his number one quarterback, and I just watched the film and just was like, I just don't get it. Like so Will Levis, my last quarterback on the list. I'm sure everybody could figure that out considering he's the last first round quarterback anybody talks about that I haven't mentioned. So my comp for Will Levis, which we've talked about recently, is literally Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold slash Daniel Jones. And the reason why I say that is because Daniel Jones is probably more athletic than Will Levis, but again, it's the massive arm that Sam Darnold had. But the problem is that when you watched him in college, like he had no offensive line. He was playing hurt, and he also had like his receivers were gone. Wendell Robinson had gone the previous year in the draft. So it's like there's a lot of things going against him, but man, that guy was like running for his life half the time. It felt like watching Sam Darnold on the Jets. And that's why I comp him to Sam Darnold, because I'm like feels like the same kind of issues. Like it's like the same like turnovers, you know, aren't as high as Sam Darnold with like the fumble rate and everything and turnovers, but it's one of those where I just like he panicked when he was under pressure like that. And if he goes to a team where they're not going to be very good, because that's who we're picking in the top 10 are not very good teams usually. He goes to a team that doesn't have an offensive line that's going to hold up. I think it could be a Sam Darnold situation where he ends up basically being, the guy that's like never learned from his issues and still has them, but you keep pushing him out there because he's got a great arm and he has the size and the talent, and it's like you think he's going to be that, but I just don't know. I just don't feel good about him being above those other three. Like I just put him slightly below all three of them, and it's because of those issues. It's because I just don't see it. I don't when I'm watching him on film, there's nothing that blows me away where I'm just going like Anthony Richardson, you see him immediately, his athleticism, his size, his arm, he's talented. CJ Stroud commands the offense. You look at that Georgia film, you're like, man, that is a dude that commands the offense, who's going to go out there, he's ready to go. Bryce Young, you watch his things, you're like, man, that guy's creative. That guy he improvise the hell out of a game. And then you watch Will Levis and you're like, he's got a good arm. Like he's just like it's just hard to like find those like massive draftable traits that you're like, I want this, you know.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I feel about him. And I get it, he's got like the cockiness and stuff. But again, we talked about Zach Wilson, who had the cockiness and had the arm and everything coming out of and the size, relatively similar size. I mean, Zach Wilson's I think is a little bit thinner, but same kind of idea. So same
Was
kind of
it Will
athleticism.
Levis with the crazy milk story? Or was that Anthony Richardson?
Yeah, that was a stupid. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Did that ever
Yes. Oh,
come
you're
out to
thinking
be
of yes.
like
I don't think that's true.
like a joke or
I can't believe that. I like read it and was like, that's not true. It's
he
like
answered questions on it though. Like about
I
how he
don't
uses
know,
like
man.
almond milk instead of his creamer. Like I'm not going to give
They
that
ask
much
some
time to it,
weird
but it really
they
blew
ask
up my
weird
brain.
questions in the combine.
Yeah, that okay. Okay. I just wanted to make sure. They had the same guy.
But anyways, that's my ratings right there. Like just off of like I watched not gonna go crazy. I didn't watch every snap of their entire career and watch them in high school, and I watched them walk off the field and the mannerisms they had with other players. No, I didn't do that. I watched every throw of theirs for a couple games, and then I picked a couple essential games, against good opponents. Because obviously you play against upper echelon talent, against good teams. That's going to show, because you're playing against guys who could potentially be in the NFL or at least are better at their position than, you're playing some random school from Western Kentucky State, or something like that. Like
Yeah.
it's one of those where you watch film of them during tough situations against good opponents, or you watch them against multiple opponents and see if you see similar strains or similar plot lines for them every game. You
Yeah.
watch every game of Bryce Young's, you'll see him improvise. You watch every game of CJ Stroud, you'll see him command the game. Now you don't see it to the level that you saw in Georgia, which that's why the Georgia game is so important for CJ Stroud, because it really kind of like you watched him and you're like, that's impressive. And then you watched him against the Georgia game and you're like, okay, now I see it. Like now it's really impressive. Richardson, you see his athleticism. With Will Levis, I just see a guy who's skittish, who's panics because he's got a bad offensive line, and that's developing not great habits considering you're going to go to a team that probably doesn't have a Pro Bowl ready offensive line, you know,
Yeah.
and I just worry. I just worry that it's going to be a Sam Darnold situation.
Okay. And I remember because I actually did watch the Georgia and Ohio State game. So I have a little bit of familiarity, but it's also the same thing in the back of my mind where I was like, I vaguely remember watching Justin Fields play as well. Cause I think for the most part, like I still haven't watched regularly watched like regular season college games, but
Mm-hmm.
like the playoffs I'll watch because generally it filters out all the games I complain about the most college football of like me, an unaware person, wants to throw in a game, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, let's see, Georgia, Ohio State, where Trevor Lawrence is from, that team, what's that team?
Clemson.
Clemson. Any of those? Yeah, I see any of those, and I'm like, oh, that probably is a good game. And then not knowing the team that they're playing, and it's like they're blowing them out 68-0 at halftime, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess I shouldn't be watching this anyways. But
Yeah, I mean,
regardless, I've actually seen him play, so that actually rings a little bit more true for
yeah.
me.
My philosophy with watching quarterbacks is you should watch multiple games over the course of the season, and then you should watch multiple games over the course of the next season that they played, and then see if there was growth. So like you watch those couple games from 2021, and then you watch those games from 2022, and you're like, okay, I see some growth, so I see that he's developing. And then the important thing is that you watch them against good teams, because obviously those are who they're going to be, players like that level of talent when that team, especially Kentucky where he played. If you're watching him against Georgia or Alabama, who are supreme, more talented teams, and you watch him and if he balled out against those two teams and he played well, he just lost because his team wasn't as good. Well, then you look at him and you go, okay, he played well against good opponents. I see that it's there. But for
Yeah,
me, it's watching him, it was like he panicked a lot, and it was just I worry again. Like I said, it's going to become a Sam Darnold situation all over again.
yeah. And it's funny that same exact attitude that you have towards college quarterbacks and stuff isn't really applied also like the NFL level as well. Like
Mm-hmm.
because QB wins are are not a team stat, they're like an individual stat and everything, but then like sometimes they aren't. And basically I'm just saying because like everyone was just like, oh, Justin Fields is terrible. They only won 3 games, blah blah blah. And that's like a whole other argument, but like exactly what we were talking about of like what did he do when he was
Yeah,
on the field and what did it
like
result in? That's what he can control. He can't go
yeah,
out there and, actually get a third down stop, but regardless, that
like
just
even
comes up a lot.
interceptions are a thing that people talk about all the time as like a stat, is like you see how many turnovers he had, and it's like, well, it depends on what the turnover looked like if Justin Fields against the Eagles, for example, is a perfect example, like at the end of the game when he threw an interception into like double coverage and he was like trying to make something happen, and he's playing against the freaking Eagles who were in the Super Bowl and he's a 3-win team. Like you chalk up that interception to like, okay, if he had better talent around him and his team, we were competing with them and he threw that in a crucial situation, well, that's different than when he just throws it when on a 3-win team and he's trying to make something out of nothing, because his receivers are awful.
Yeah, because you're
So
playing with house money at that point too. It's just like we shouldn't
exactly.
even be in this game.
So when you see interceptions, like, if a guy in college threw 15 interceptions and you're like, wow, that's a lot. And you're like, well, let's go and see what they looked like. Like, were they interceptions where you're like, where is he throwing that to? Or were they interceptions where, like, dude's playing against, he's at, Southern Illinois and he's playing against Georgia and he's trying to just make crap happen because, he's got, a wide receiver who's studying for his exam, 5 minutes before the game. It's like, well,
They just
can't
threw
really
him
blame
out
him on
there. They were
those.
like, I know you didn't get to like your fourth section, but like you need to go out and like play just really quick, and then you can come back. You can actually bring it on the sidelines. You could study in
Yeah,
between plays. You don't need to
that's
know
what I
the
mean.
playbook.
That's
It's
what I mean.
fine.
Then you just go, I'm not gonna blame him.
Yeah.
So now we go to who or what will the packages be for the first overall pick? And from what I gather, so I kind of created a couple packages. I sent them to you, and we're gonna look over them. I created a couple packages, and I created them based around picks. I did throw in one where there was a player, and we can talk, well, two where there was a player, but those are like alternative options. I don't really believe in them. I don't think that, because the reason why is because if you listen to everything that Poles has been saying, he's been talking about how he wants to get at least another first round pick for, this trade, if not two. And he said confidently that he believes he can get two. And he's even said that he's like, there's even been surprise teams that are out of the 10, that are out of the top 10, which, by the way, I included who I think that team is in here, which we'll talk about. So I kind of created this centered around picks, and I created it around compensation that I think is reasonable for the trade. And the reason why I think it's reasonable is because you're going for the first overall pick. If this is for the second overall pick, I don't think I'm including as many picks as I'm including, but it's partly because you're trading up as far as you are for your choice of every player. So
Yeah.
that's kind of what we're going with. So my first trade that I think I'll look at is Carolina. That's the one we'll look at first. So I have them trading with Carolina, which to me feels almost inevitable at this point that it's going to be Carolina, just because
Hmm.
there's been things that have been said. Like Carolina has expressed, like the owner and everything have expressed that they're like tired of dealing with basically what they've been dealing with, and that they believe that their roster is close enough that they just need to get the quarterback right. Which I mean, that can be said about a lot of rosters in history, but that's the truth. So for them, I think the Bears trade the first overall pick. I think they trade a 24 third round pick. And I think the compensation they get in return is the ninth overall, the 40th overall this year, the 24th first round pick, and a 25 first round pick. So that's three first round picks and a second round pick. They're getting the first overall and a third in return. That's kind of the first trade that I'm going with.
And see, the first thing that I jump to on that almost makes me more unhappy is I think the Panthers aren't going to be that bad. So those picks are going to be a lot lower. Like I
Well,
feel like they weren't that bad in the first
that's part of
place.
the equation too is that if Carolina might not value those picks because they might think that they're going to be out of the top 15. They might be in the bottom 15 because they think they're going to be good. It's there's a little bit of that too where like they're confident in getting rid of these picks because they know we're going to get our guy and we're going to bring him into a team that's ready to go now.
Yep. Yeah. I don't know. The extra, like getting an extra first overall pick is great and all. I like that part. Obviously, it's just that is like my first overall worry. I don't know,
Hmm.
but at the same time, I can see the same thing for like the Colts, which is like the more popular idea
Yeah.
and more popular pick. I don't
Now,
know.
a lesser trade that gets thrown around, which I don't agree with, and I'll mention it just because it's been mentioned, but I don't agree with it because again, I think the Panthers think they're close enough that they wouldn't want to do this. But people have said, well, what if the Bears go and trade for a player a part of the deal? Well, in this case, the Bears would get the ninth overall pick. I think they would get the 24 first round pick, and they would get Brian Burns. And then in return, the Panthers would get the first overall pick and the same third round pick next year. Could be a third round this year, third round next year, whatever. I think it's a third round pick is reasonable. Now, why would Brian Burns be in this trade? Well, he is up for a contract coming up. Do they want to extend him? Do they not? Blah blah blah. Do the Bears say in order to get this done, we have to have Brian Burns and the Panthers need to get their guy now? So they're like, all right, that's fine. That's a possibility. Although I
Yeah,
think it's like 90-10. Like I think 90% the first trade would occur before the 10% the second trade would occur.
yeah. It feels like shooting yourself in the foot at the same time too, where they're just like he's one of the cornerstones why they feel like they're ready.
Yeah,
So like getting rid of him. Plus isn't he like ridiculously young?
yeah, he's like 25 or something. I think he's 24 or 25, one of the two.
He's 24 and his birthday's in the July 24th or
Yeah, so he'll be
not that.
25 shortly,
Yeah, that's
or before the
nuts.
beginning of the next season. Yeah, that's what I mean. I don't like this trade. People have mentioned his name. They're not going to do that because they are, like I said, they think that they're ready, and that's why they would trade up for a quarterback in the first place. That's why I think they're the most likely trade up option. The funny part is, who do they trade up for? Well, I've heard that they like Anthony Richardson a lot. So would it be funny if they trade up for him? Wouldn't surprise me. It's one of those where I think any of those three guys, CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, Bryce Young, I think any of those three could go first overall. It just depends on what team falls in love with who they, whichever player.
Do you remember what the Panthers offensive line was like last year?
No, I don't remember, but I know that they've got Moton, whatever his name is, on the right. Um, left side. I don't feel like they're like a bad offensive line if I remember correctly. You'd have to look to see like what their like rating was, overall.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I don't remember them being bad. But it's one of those where, you know, overall the team is pretty talented and pretty young, and depending on
Frank
how
Reich just
active they
got there.
are.
However you
Hmm?
feel about that. Frank Reich just got there. However you feel about him.
Well, and you know that he's sick and tired of having the carousel of, used quarterbacks and the
The
owner
Island of
and
Misfit
GM are.
Toys at quarterback.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know. It might be the most realistic one. I'm not gonna lie. Like I feel like of all the teams we probably listed on here, they're the most ready to go, and then one I could see
Yeah.
imploding.
That's why I
So I
put them
don't want to
first
see
because I was
that.
like, they're most likely to me.
Yeah, they're most likely, and they could probably say, fine, we'll give up that 25, that pick in 25. But
Yeah, to get
man,
it
if that
done.
comes out to be like they're all like in the 20s or something, like for the next like 3 years,
Huh?
that'd be really sad. I
That's what.
I trust the Falcons, the Raiders, everybody else like the Colts like to blow up and like implode more.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It's probably not warranted, but yeah.
Well, now we move on to the next one. The next one is, in my opinion, the Falcons. Now I know the Falcons is kind of a weird spot because what are they doing? They like the Lamar Jackson stuff came out. We'll talk about that shortly after this because that's something that I want to quickly address because I'm confused. The Falcons obviously want you to either stick with Riddler. What's his name? The freaking
Oh, was it Desmond
Ritter,
Ritter?
Desmond Ritter. There we go. Jeez. Who, by the
Forgot.
way, I said that I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole last year in the draft. So I don't I
Where
don't
did they
like him moving
draft him at?
forward. They like third round or something. I don't know. I
Oh,
remember. He's there. He's from Cincinnati. I watched him in college. Didn't like his film. He looked bad. He didn't look very good. So
gotcha. Yep,
obviously I'll
third
root for
round.
a guy. Like I don't want him to have a bad career, but I just don't think he's going to be good. So I think the Falcons could give the Bears, and the way that this would go is that the Bears would get their eighth overall. I think they would get the 45th overall. They would get the first round pick next year, first round pick in 25, and then the Falcons would get the first overall. And then I actually don't know why I put a fourth round pick here. I think they would get a third round pick in return. Um, a third
For
round pick,
next
and I
year.
think that yeah, I think third round next year, and then I think they even could get like a seventh or something like that if they really, because they're a little higher than the Panthers. I think I had that flipped in my head because I think I thought the Falcons were behind the Panthers. But either way, that's the way that trade would go. Yeah, I
Okay.
think I flipped all these. I flipped the compensation because I flipped the compensation, I should say, because I would think that they would get a third round pick because I'm thinking the further you go up the draft, I don't know, just ignore me. I'll explain it later. But
Yeah.
the Falcons are an interesting one because again, it's kind of it's difficult because it's like one of those where I don't know how close they are to getting like the coach has been there for a while. The Falcons have not been good, but they're not close. Like they're not as close as the Panthers are. So
They're just middling.
yeah, the Falcons would just boil down to like, do they really love any of these quarterbacks? Like if they absolutely love any of these quarterbacks, then they might trade up, and that's where I think this would go down. But the thing with the Falcons is I could also see them being like, well, let's just draft another guy who will help build our team, and then we'll go after, we'll enter the sweepstakes next year for,
Hmm.
Caleb
Yeah.
Williams and Drake May. So
I mean, I admittedly don't really, I can't really think a lot about like roster construction for the Falcons outside of like a couple of players, but like they're like not like what am I trying to say? They're not in between like stages and everything. They're not like in the what do you usually call it? Like cap hell or anything. They're just kind of
Yeah,
I don't know. They're kind of like Matt Ryan. Obviously, I think they probably still have his contract on the books at least for a little bit, maybe like a little bit more money. But they're kind
yeah,
of
they
like
still have a little
exhausted
bit.
on resources and
Well,
young
the thing
players.
is like they have like a weird assortment of players. So they've got Kyle Pitts, who's obviously he's one of my draft loves. I loved him out of the draft. He's one of the best tight ends, one of the most talented tight end receivers in the league. He's there, but he's coming off a big injury. Then you've got Drake London, who didn't play as well as you would like as a first round wide receiver, who's 6'5", But it's also one of those where it's not like quarterback play was great there last year. I mean, they had Marcus Mariota, so like, maybe you chalk that up to the better quarterback play, receiver plays better. And then you got like the rest of the receiving core is like not very noteworthy. And then you got like Cordell Patterson, who love that Cordell
Oh
Patterson
yeah,
has had like a resurgence, but he's 32 years old, 33 years old, so it's like he's not your long term option at running back. Like he's a great utility player for the next 2 years or so, but
yeah.
like
Did he re up there? I guess he did.
yeah, well I think he's there for like 3 years, right? 2 or 3 years.
It looks like
You have
for
to
the
look up his
most.
contract, like type in like his like Cordell Patterson contract. Yeah.
Two
Is that yeah,
year,
2 years?
10.5 mil. Oh, so just till next year, and the rest is
Okay.
hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's
But
32.
he's 32. He'll be there next year, but then he's gone. Then you need running back. Honestly, honestly, maybe they just go maybe they just go Bijan Robinson this year and then freaking say screw it and wait till next year. I don't know. The Falcons are in a weird position. Their defense is like Grady Jarrett's good, but he's old. Like they just lost their linebacker last. They lost like two of their linebackers last year. They're so confusing. They're just not like AJ Terrell there though. He's like one of the best corners in the league, and he's there and he's young.
Oh yeah,
Like, it's just such a weird
it's a weird
combination of
spot.
like they just have good talented players that are old, and then they have good talented players that are young. But the good talented players that are old are like about to be on their way out, like the last 2 3 years, which is like the developmental years of the quarterback that they draft.
Yeah,
So I don't know. I don't know what they're doing. They're kind of just weird. So like if they really fall in love with a guy like Anthony Richardson or something like that, and then they want to trade up to number one overall, more power to them. But I don't know. That's why I'm like leaning towards the Panthers.
yeah.
Now the next one is also interesting because again it's also like a what are they gonna do? Which is the Raiders, and I have them below the Falcons because I think the Raiders are more inclined to get like Jimmy Garoppolo or somebody like that, who's still available. And but if they
Yeah,
made
the
the trade, it
McDaniels
would
connection
be
too.
yeah. If they made the trade, it would be a seventh overall, 39th overall for us. First round next year, first round 25, and they would get the first overall. I think they would get a 24 third rounder and probably a 24 sixth rounder.
Okay.
So you'd have to give a little bit more capital up, and that 24 sixth rounder might even be like a 5 or a 4. But you'd have to give up more capital because again, they're lower on the totem pole. Carolina's at 9, Raiders are at 7. But then you also have to kind of consider the second round picks. So like the Falcons, for example, yeah, they're in the 8th overall, but they have the 45th overall in the second round. Whereas the Panthers have the 9th overall, so they're one pick behind the Falcons, but they have the 40th overall, so they're 5 picks higher in the second round. So it's like kind of weird how you have to look at that. The Raiders, though, I just don't know. I don't know because I feel like they're going to go towards Jimmy Garoppolo. I feel like they want. I just don't know that they're going to go young quarterback. I think with Devonte Adams being there and who's the tight end? What's his name? He's older. Darren
Darren
Waller.
Waller. Yep.
Darren Waller's older though, so he doesn't have like a ton of years left of being as good as he is.
They did just
The
sign him
offensive,
though.
yeah,
He's older, but didn't he not play as much because of like off the field issues and injuries?
yeah, so like he'll be good, but it's one of those where again his athleticism will start falling off at some point. That's what happens. So it's like he's not going to be as good. So it's like you have Darren Waller there, you got Devontae Adams there. You're kind of built for like now, in a way.
Yeah.
Especially because you got Colton Miller on the offensive line, who's one of the best young left tackles in the game.
Josh Jacobs was
Um,
tagged today.
yeah, Josh Jacobs is tagged, so he's coming back next year. They'll probably try to work out a 4-year deal with him. So it's one of those where I feel like they're more inclined to go towards like a Jimmy Garoppolo and just try to figure it out now,
Yeah.
versus long term with a quarterback. But if they get an inkling again where they're like they fall in love with CJ Stroud and they think he's the one that they're going to go with, or they fall in love with Bryce Young because they think that they can plug him into this offense with Darren Waller and Devontae Adams. Because again, that's the thing too is like I think that they
That
want
would
to
be
win now.
wild.
Well, the thing is, I think they want to win now, so I think they would be more inclined to get Jimmy Garoppolo. But the thing is like, what if they think that they
Hmm.
can develop a quarterback better because they got better weapons and they got a great left tackle and so
Who's their left tackle? That's
Colton Miller.
oh, okay, that's
He's
right.
like one of the best young left tackles in the game. He's only like 24, 25 years old or something like that, but he's been, pretty darn good.
Yeah. No, that's interesting that they I agree that they want to win. Being in the new stadium, they got the coach and everything. They were super embarrassing last year.
Yep.
Um they'll probably I mean, yeah, they're a good desperate sellout type of pick. They just signed Devontae Adams to crazy money. Again, just another team that's in such a weird position.
I think they're in a better position than the Falcons, but they are in a weird position where they have so many good weapons and good things going for them, but they also don't have a lot of time left before those things start to get old.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
like, I don't know.
I know nothing about their defense either. I just know about their offense. That's
I
pretty
think their
much it.
defense is fine because you have Max Crosby. Um, what's his face? The pass rusher they got, Chandler Jones, hasn't didn't play super well last year, but I mean he could bounce back. Like their
Oh yeah.
defense is fine. I think it like I said, it depends on whether they think they need a veteran quarterback to step in or that they feel confident in developing a young quarterback because they have the offense in place.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. There again, it's kind of a weird situation. It's not as weird as the Falcons, but it's just one of those where I feel like they're leaning towards veteran quarterback, but I could see them being like, we can develop Bryce Young, like, or we can develop CJ Stroud.
Yeah, that's there. Okay, I guess now they've flipped with my teams with like the unexpected being the Falcons. I think the Raiders would have more of a chance because they are more desperate. I feel like the Falcons kind of sold and knew they were selling and
Yeah,
kind of committed to it. So like there isn't as much pressure there. But like the Raiders, I feel like definitely are under a lot of pressure.
yeah. And
So
then here's
they
the
are
funny
now
thing
my
about
crazy card.
yeah, and then here's the funny thing about the quarterback situation is that is I think that the Raiders want to win now, so I think the developmental prospect in Anthony Richardson isn't for them. So I think that if they traded up, it would be either for CJ Stroud or Bryce Young.
Yeah, I
So
feel that. Yeah, I feel that way too. I feel like the development, that's not gonna happen.
yeah.
They're not accounting for that
Now,
time.
now a ridiculous trade that I threw out here just because people have talked about it is the Raiders giving us the seventh overall, the first overall next year, and then Devontae Adams for our first round pick, and then like a fifth round pick this year, maybe a fourth next year. But that to me again feels the same as the other trade with Brian Burns, where either way, I think the Raiders feel like they're closer than they are further away. You know, like if the
Yeah,
Falcons were like, "Oh, we'll give you Grady Jarrett next," this first round pick, next year's first round pick for the first overall, then I'm like, okay, that makes more sense as a trade because Grady Jarrett's a little older. Maybe they want to get younger. They're getting a developmental guy. That to me makes more sense. Whereas you're throwing out Devontae Adams or Brian Burns, those are teams that I think are close. They think they're closer, than they are further away. So I think they'd want to keep those assets. So the whole Devontae Adams being included in a trade, I think, is an even longer shot, I think, than Brian Burns. The only reason why I could see that
yeah.
happening is if they wanted to burn the contract, but then they would be owed so much in dead money. I just don't see it happening. But people have said it, so I threw it in there as like a possibility. But I just, I'd
It
be
would be
shocked if
really
that occurred.
cool. It'd be really
Yeah, it'd be
cool.
awesome.
You know, if he was 28, it would feel really awesome. Going back to where like going on 30 is getting old
Yep.
conversation, blah blah blah. But like, yeah, like at least for like next year, that would be really cool to
Yep.
see. It's just dangerous for the years afterwards, but yeah, as a fast casual fan or not fast casual and just wanting to see something happen,
Hmm.
imagining the number one wide receiver being Darnell Mooney and then the next year being Devontae Adams is just ridiculous to think about.
Yep. Now I go to my next team, which is the dark horse team, which I think is the one that I think when polls mentioned, because they're already been rumored to have talked to the Bears. When polls mentioned, oh, there's a team out of the top 10 that was even contacting or was confident in contacting, I think this is where you get the Titans into the mix. Now, the reason why I think the Titans get in the mix is because I think the Titans are done with the whole Tannehill thing. You know, the report came out that they're shopping Derrick Henry, and then that report was shot down like faster than anything could be
Was it? I
shot
actually didn't
down.
see the follow up on that.
Oh, the Titans shot that down very quickly. They were like, we are not shopping him. Like, we want him.
Huh. Okay.
Which then made me go, all right, well, they are like, if they want to keep Derrick Henry, they're not shopping, getting rid of resources, trying to rebuild. That to me feels like a team that would make, a kind of Hail Mary, let's go for broke and let's try to get a rookie quarterback in here that we, believe will take this team to the next level.
Yeah. What do you think
And
about
thus,
them switching or pivoting from Tannehill so quickly? Do you think it makes
it's
sense and they just tried the same thing a number of times and they're just like, yeah, it's not, we can't get past the Chiefs?
Yeah, it's like first year Tannehill was very good. Tannehill first year, like you're like, okay, this is a guy that we can ride with. And then it started getting to where it's like, okay, he plateaued. Like he reached his ceiling. He's not going to break through it. It is what it is. Are you okay with that? And obviously they're realizing that that's the case and they're not. They're wanting to move on. So to me, with this trade, the Titans would give us the 11th overall, the 42nd overall, the 24th first round pick, the 25th first round pick, and then we would only give them a 23rd first and then like a 24th sixth. Because of how close they're moving up and everything like that, they would need the three picks, three first round picks, the second round pick, and then we would only give them a sixth, to kind of help move the needle so they feel a little bit better about themselves.
Huh.
But either way, it's going to be a Hail Mary thing from them. But I think they are a dark horse. I think ultimately, at the end of the day, I think your two most likely trade down options to that range is probably Carolina or the Titans
Okay.
from that
Okay.
like 8 to 11 range.
Yeah, I'd it's been a little while since I looked at their again, like at their defense and some like their players on offense and stuff, but like I don't know. I guess do you think that like if they went all out for the first overall pick and gave that stuff up, are they like gutting themselves the next couple of years that they need to rebuild and like reload with younger guys?
I think they are in a good place right now. I think that they could eat. I think that they could make this trade, and I think that if it doesn't work out, then they would just tear it down over the next year. At the final year of this 3 year, because you're thinking their picks are going to be gone next year and the next year after that. So that's 2 years down the road. I think 2 years down the road, they would be okay with tearing it down at that point because like right now Derrick Henry is still young enough that he's in his prime that you're okay that he's your he's go to. Trayvon Burks didn't play super well last year, but again, quarterback play, maybe if that improves, you get a guy like Bryce Young in there, he starts creating, Burks starts showing out a little bit. Maybe they get another receiver and, free agency, something like that. Maybe they get another guy in the draft. I
Yeah.
just think their defense is pretty solid. Like I think they're a well coached team and a well put together team where they've got a decent amount of young players on that team too, where you're not worried about them. Like I don't, I just I'm not as worried about them if they got it wrong. Because like if they got it wrong and they had to eat those next 2 years and not having a first round pick, it would suck. But then 2 years down the road, it would be them kind of tearing it all down. So I think that like they're fine. Like I
Yeah.
think they have a window, and I think it's the next 2 years, and I think that they can try to maximize that window the best they can, or they can just admit it's over. But if they're not shopping Derrick Henry, they're not admitting it's over. So I think that the next phase of that is pivoting to they want to try to maximize this window.
Yeah. That's I don't that is an interesting take. Is there any team that's not on this list that you think would randomly come into it? Like if you have a dark horse, who's your like super dark horse?
Oh God,
Like
do you have
the
the draft
one
order? Pull that up real quick.
yeah, the ones that you didn't account for deliberately
I
on
know. I'm trying to
purpose.
think of like I'm trying to think just off the top of my head who would even randomly come in the mix. Like maybe the Jets are desperate enough because they miss out on Aaron Rodgers. Maybe Aaron Rodgers, for some godforsaken reason, wants to stay in Green Bay, and then all of a sudden they're panicking.
That's my favorite part about watching slowly like dominoes fall into place with that, and like the
Hmm.
Derek Carr going to the Saints, like you said. Um, it's interesting because if that doesn't work out, what is their backup plan? Like I guess Jimmy Garoppolo is like the immediate one, but what if like they're courting Aaron Rodgers and all this goes on, and like he goes to randomly to, I don't know,
The
the
Raiders.
the Raiders, maybe the
Goes back to
Raiders.
Devontae Adams and the Raiders.
Yeah, are the Jets just gonna hit the panic button and immediately just sell because they have a
Dude,
really important year? They
the
can't just be like, well,
compensation,
whatever.
the compensation that would be in that. Because the other issue too is that I went down as far as Tennessee because I think that's as far down as the Bears would be okay trading back to. I just don't foresee them wanting to go like all the way down. Like 13 with the New York Jets is to me like possibility, but like crazy dark horse because now
Yeah.
you're trading down to 13. Like now you're going really far down.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's probably
Because
not what I'd want to
because the
see
thing is
either.
like eight, like 8, 9, 10 is where a lot of people think that like the tackles are going to start going. So like Peter Skoronski, Paris Johnson Jr., who's the guy from Georgia? I can't remember. Broderick. I forget what his name is. Right tackle. He would. Those three are going to go in this range between like 8 to 11. So if you start going down to like 13 with the Jets, um, like it's starting to become one of those where like the only reason why I can see that happening is if the Jets offer some crazy trade where they're like giving you 3 picks, they're giving you a second round pick, they're giving you a second round pick next year, some kind of Russell Wilson crazy level trade where they're giving you like 3 first round picks, 2 second round picks, 2 players, in the mix. Like like that would be then I'd see it happening. But
Yeah.
then you would also have to trade down with the idea that like that would be the range to draft like Jackson Smith and Jibba. Like if you wanted him, which I love him out of like even at 10, 11, if we traded with Tennessee, I would absolutely take Jackson Smith and Jibba in a heartbeat.
Mm-hmm. See,
So
whatever you're thinking now, when we come back next week as well,
yep,
and even just yesterday, it's infinitely more likely to happen now that like Geno Smith
yep,
is signed, Derek Carr is gone, Aaron
yep.
Rodgers is in New York, like all that stuff seemed
Well, we gotta wait
crazy.
till free agency kicks off too, because free agency will
Sure.
tell a lot too, because it depends like what teams are buyers. You start seeing like Carolina starts spending money like crazy. They might want to trade up because they're starting to sign players. Like if
Yeah.
they're signing players because they're still building, they're probably going to be a team that's going to be heavy wanting to trade.
Yeah. In the
Starts
infinite
next
wisdom of the
Wednesday.
NFL and being able to like cultivate a 24/7 news cycle, I
Yep.
still didn't know off the top of my head. March 15th is when free agency starts.
Yep.
So
Next
that's
Wednesday.
it's gonna be the day before, it's the day after the podcast. That's
I know. We'll
interesting.
do the podcast and then it'll hit. And the funny
Maybe
thing is,
maybe do a
deals will probably
bonus
be
episode
done.
on Thursday or something if it's crazy. Who knows?
I was to say, yeah, we'll have to see how it is because if the Bears come out with like hail makers, then or haymakers. Why do I
Yeah.
keep calling them hail makers? Who was I with? Was I with?
Like Frozone, the Hal Makers.
I don't know who I was with, but I was calling them hail makers, and I was like, "What's
And
wrong
they're
with me?"
probably like,
Too.
Okay, yeah,
That's what it
sure.
was. It was like that's not right. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's just I don't see them going past 11, so I think Tennessee would be like the dark horse, the super dark horse that would be the Jets, but I don't think it's gonna happen.
Okay.
Now, my last trade that I think is hilarious, just because I think this is like the Colts getting absolutely
Chris
desperate.
Ballard's job's on the line. He starts to freak out. He realizes he can't afford his new mortgage, all that stuff kind of trade.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
then I think the Colts. I think realistically, the Colts, if the trade would happen, would give us the fourth overall. They'd give us the next year's first. They would give us next year's second or this year's second, and then we would give them a first, and then we'd give them like a fifth. Now, Colts getting desperate. This is where I go with this trade. Is I think they give us the fourth overall. They give us a first round pick next year. They give us the 25 first round pick, and then we give them the first overall, and then we give them in return like a fifth and a third. But they give us 3 first round picks.
Yeah.
And heck, they might even include the second round pick in that mix. But I think that's them getting desperate because like the Panthers are like, we're ready to offer 3 first round picks right now to make this happen. And then that's when the Colts go, we need a quarterback now. Like like he starts having PTSD of like starts seeing Nick Foles and like
He's checking his
like
phone and resenses like Philip Rivers, and he's like, again, do I really want to try this
yeah,
again?
he looks down. He's gonna text from Philip Rivers because apparently Philip Rivers wants to make a comeback. He looks down. He sees the text from Philip Rivers. It's like I'm ready, and then Nick Foles sends him a text and is like, "Hey man, where you at?" And then he just goes, "I can't do it. I can't do it," and then
Can't
just
do another year of
pulls the
this.
trigger and
Yeah.
makes the trade.
Yeah, no, I think if anything there'd be more on that side than anything else cuz yeah, like you said, like Chris Ballard is probably pining for his job. There
Yep.
isn't exactly like a haha like well, let's try this one more time. We could do a 1 year patch job like
And the funny thing is the Jalen Carter news changed everything for me because when Jalen Carter was in the mix for the top 5 pick, which I think he was because of his talent level and everything, and I think he's a generational talent. But then as soon as that whole story goes out of the thing, I think it's hard to draft in top 5. Is
yeah.
there going to be a team in the first round that takes a chance on him? Absolutely. That's how the draft always goes. Regardless of that, though, I think he falls out of top 5, and because of that, I think, before when you traded to 4 with the Colts, it made so much more sense because you get a first round pick next year in that trade. You would get, probably the fourth overall, probably the second round this year. And then you would get either Will Anderson or Jalen Carter, whichever team the Cardinals didn't take. Now, the problem is that now if you drop to 4, Will Anderson goes 3 to the Cardinals. Well, now all of a sudden you're sitting there at 4, and you might have to overdraft or for like Tyree Wilson or Miles Murphy from Clemson or something like that, and then it's one of those where you wish that you had traded further back. Now, I'm not saying that that trade still can't happen because that trade could still happen with the Bears thinking that maybe they could trade back again.
Yeah.
If they're hearing from like the Titans that they love Anthony Richardson, and the Bears hear that the Colts want to take C.J. Stroud, and then the Texans want to take Bryce Young, and then the Cardinals want to take Will Anderson, and then they're at 4, and all of a sudden Anthony Richardson's available, and the Panthers are like, we absolutely want him, or the Titans are like, we absolutely want him. There could be a double trade back for sure, but I think that scenario is rarer or just less likely than if you just traded back right now to like the Titans Panthers and got it done and over with. And then, now you know where you're drafting. And then now you know that you've got these picks. You got 3 first round picks these next 3 years. So now for the next 3 years or the next 2 years after this year, you're picking twice in the first round, which is also further ammunition, down the road. If next year you guys are failing and Justin Fields all of a sudden looks bad, then you want to get in the Caleb Williams, Drake May mix, and then now you've got 4 first round picks within 2 years to offer in a trade. Like, it
Yeah.
makes the most sense for the Bears to just trade down. I also think that it makes the most sense for the Bears to do it relatively soon, so that way they know where they're picking. So that way they can then also decide on what prospects will most likely be available then, and then also address certain positions in free agency. So,
Yeah, I mean it's again going back to just wanting to see stuff happen and being like in on it now. I want to see something happen this week would be great.
yep,
Um and I feel like I felt I didn't even like mean to come upon this like conclusion, but at the same time, like the Bears also have incentive to like move that pick as well,
hmm
because like you said, Jalen Carter news like changed everything. Every day that they don't, it's not supposed to be something that normally happens, but like it does happen. Like weird stuff does come out, like news changes, like prospects change, everything else like that. The combine's over, so like injuries, probably less likely to really happen until the draft. But there is still like every day like that changes, that eventually could change like draft order, new news can come out and it could change everything as well. So like it's not 100, like they're obviously in control, and that's like the most important part, but there is
uh,
incentive for them to lock in and be like hands off, like we did it, we have the picks, like we're locked in on where we want to be now and we got that
yep,
pick. It could go bad, it could go worse, but there's always a time value of risk, and that's just part of it. So
yep. Now the last thing I want to address real quick before free agency starts going, should we? Well, okay, here's my questions. Do we want to go through this? So there's a couple things I want to talk about. So I wanted to talk about this list that I created for my Bears wish list for free agency.
oh yeah.
There's also I wanted to talk about some other things like Ted Lasso, blah blah blah, all that stuff. Do we want to wait because the next podcast is going to be Tuesday and it's going to be right before free agency and this is my wish list?
That makes sense. Yeah.
Okay.
Why not?
Okay. I mean, that's what I'm thinking because we are going kind of long right now. Like we're already an hour and 38 minutes in, and there is a couple other things I want to talk to. And this is
Yeah,
actually good. We can keep this list because I can adjust this list a bit because now they're like I mean like on this wish list I already have a player that was already franchise tagged and I'm disappointed about it. But we'll talk about it next week.
yeah,
So it's one of those where I'll probably adjust this list and next week and then come with like a completed. This is what I want. So yeah,
yeah.
so we'll save this for next week. Next
Miles
week,
Sanders is in free agency. Just a little tease
yeah,
on the
right.
list, is
That's
he? I didn't know that actually.
yeah, yes, because they well, I don't think they franchise tagged him yet. So you know.
Hmm. Okay.
Anyways, so yeah, so little tidbit or little tease for next week. My
Hmm.
Bears free agency wish list. I will have the exact wish list listed. I actually have it ranked too, and I'll probably adjust that a little bit. But I
Yeah.
have it ranked based on who I think they should address immediately, like day one when free agency hits, and you know those deals are announced. That always announced, you know, right away because deals are always done beforehand.
Yeah.
Um, I think this will be good. This will be my wish list. We'll show this next week. We'll talk about this next week.
Agree.
Now, what I do want to talk about, because also next week is coming, is Ted Lasso, which is like one of our favorite shows.
Yes.
Because
Is it March 15th? Is it?
yeah, it is March 15th. So literally, free agency kicks
Ah.
off. Ted Lasso's back.
Okay. Ted Lasso was back. Just the preview of things I figured out today as well.
Okay.
Succession, also another thing I told you to watch, is coming back, and
Yep.
it's also the final season. It's March 26th. You found out in surprise today, The Mandalorian already started,
That
and the
blew my
second
mind.
episode is coming out tomorrow. And also my probably I think like just by like a thin hair favorite show, it's still like airing or whatever after Better Call Saul ended. Barry is also coming back in April. They just
Yep.
announced that today for the final season. So Succession is ending. Better Call Saul ended earlier this year. And now, like, I mean, like Ted Lasso, I highly doubt it's going to end. They would usually market that, and I think they're probably going to make that run longer. But like,
Well,
there's a lot of good
did you
stuff
hear
ending.
the Sudeikis comment though?
No.
I don't know if that's 100% true, but I heard somebody like there was a tweet like about Jason Sudeikis saying where Jason Sudeikis basically said like that he like this season was written as the last one.
So that's what was going around a lot, and that's why I thought they were going to eventually start talking about this, like in the teaser as the final season, because you get a lot from
Uh-huh.
marketing. And I was telling Tessa about this as well too, is that like they like I was trying to figure out the okay, here we go. That's what I was looking at. So for season 3 is making about $1 million per episode. So like one, I'd say probably Ted Lasso, obviously like during like in the middle of beginning of COVID, like shot to popularity, became huge. Season 2 only continued it, and I'd say it's like basically the most mainstream you could be. So
Yeah.
like massive, massive, massive market like for the for Apple TV.
Mhm.
Um, but they're right in the middle of it, and since we've been waiting for season 3 for so long, I just don't see them like they obviously have like part of it. Hello, Milson Wise. What's up? We're talking about Ted Lasso from the Chicago Bears trades. I don't see them like allowing them to end it in a way. I know they have control over the property and everything. And also like Jason Sudeikis, also very interesting that again, that promo for NBC Sports was like 9 years ago. And he like at some point bought the rights to it. So like he owns like a significant portion of like Ted Lasso, the rights and everything, which is
Mhm.
also making him bank because it blew up and he bet on it. So just lots of really interesting behind the scenes stuff. And I can't see them ending it. I can see them at most ending it at 4 where they have time to market it. But like now
Yeah.
I'm sure they're not.
Well, yeah, I think the writing on the wall is that like yeah, the marketing team would be all over it if it was the last season. If it was like season 3 was really the end, they would be marketing the hell out of the fact that this is the final season. You know, this is it. This is it. Everything's going to come to an end. You know, but I think this show to me is not one of those shows that's going to go long. Like I don't feel like this is like a 9 season show. So I do think
Yeah.
like 4 or 5 seasons is probably the sweet spot for them, but I don't see it ending in 3. But I just saw that comment and I was like, please don't be true. I was like, I love this show to a T. It was like I've been watching like so many clips and so many like I rewatched it and then I was watching clips of it and it's one of those where I keep watching it and I keep going like, God, this
Let's
show's
try
done
and
so
guess which
freaking well.
one was like your favorite clip, a thing that like popped in your head and you was like, I have to watch it. You could try and guess mine, and I'll give you it's from season 2.
It's from season 2.
And it came up, and it was like kind of a thing where it's musically oriented, but it was more of also like a thing where it was like, oh, that sequence was really cool, and it also like perfectly captures like the character. and it was like it's like a really good like one-off type of thing. It's a lot of hints.
Oh my god, what is that? Singing? It's involved with singing?
It's involved with music, and it's like a character coming back. It's later in the season.
Oh, is this? Well, wait. I'm so confused.
Okay. It's
What
I'm
part is this?
I'm trying to think of more. Okay, it's when somebody comes back to coach.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
That is fantastic.
Because the part where
Yeah,
he's coming in, and also obviously the song choice.
I was thinking it was late in the season, and I'm like, that's not late in the season, and so I
Yeah,
wasn't.
I guess it was. I guess it was midpoint,
Yeah,
but it was
it was
like
like,
it perfectly mixes like it mixes emotion, which also corresponds with humor and everything. But he's like in the Sky Sports studio, and it's like kind of funny because he's storming off the set and whatever, and they're like, oh, they're freaking out about it. But then he's like, oh, where are you going and whatever, and he's just like, or no, he's still on the set. And he's like, I miss all of it, and it just makes me think about how I just honestly like miss playing sports on like a regular basis so much because like
yep,
that's funny in the moment, but also now watching that like at like years later and stuff is like and then they go to actually like him getting there and everything. And my favorite part when he's like getting the ticket or whatever, and they're like, oh no, you need to get a ticket, and the two guards are like watching or whatever, and he
yep,
was just like, he's like, okay, whatever, I'll go and get it. Then comes back and he's just like, oh yeah, here's your ticket or whatever. He's like, fuck off. And he's like, oh, it is you. And he lets him through
yeah.
and everything, and then it goes in the whole ensemble. And then it foreshadows season 3 because like he walks past Nate, they say hi and everything, but like Nate's like side eyeing him and
Yep,
everything, and
yeah, it
there's
gives
that
them the
tension.
look, and you're like, ooh,
Oh,
Nate didn't like that. I was
it's
watching.
perfect.
I was so being a video gamer, there's those comments when you watch like those games like Fallout and stuff like that when you make a decision, and
Mm-hmm.
then in the top it just is
He'll remember
like,
that.
yeah, they will remember that or something like that. That
Yeah.
I was watching this reactor react to season 2 of Ted Lasso, and literally anytime like he gave like a side eye, Nate gave like a side eye or anything in there, they would just literally be like, "Oh, Nate didn't like that," and I just kept thinking like in the top of like the Ted Lasso thing, then it would just be like, "And Nate didn't like that" or something like that, because that's the whole show. Like the whole second season, you're like, you just Nate gives like a look or he makes a comment, and you're just like, "Oh, Nate didn't enjoy that."
And like even the season 3 trailer and stuff too, it's like a super brief shot, but like he's at that table like that he fought for like his parents' his favorite restaurant, but he's like alone,
Yep.
which is like it's
Yeah, dude.
self-explanatory, but it's great because like he got what he want, but there's literally nobody there.
Well, and then they have that. There's like a shot too of like they show in the trailer too. They show Ted Lasso like with the coaches like on the other side, and I think they're like celebrating with a player or something. I forget what it is in the shot, but then they flash over to Nate, and they always cut trailers, so like you don't know if it's him reacting to that situation exactly, but it just
Yeah.
is like perfect where you see Nate's reaction and you kind of almost see like that like hints of regret, like like oh, I made a mistake, like I miss that what they're having.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just one of those where like the show did a good job. It's funny because I thought Nate being just that way the whole second season came out of nowhere. Like I was like, oh, why is this guy such like a dick in the second season? And then I went like rewatching it and watching people react to it and everything. I'm like, okay, they actually did a pretty solid job. Like the first season is like he holds Ted Lasso to like such a high esteem because of like him recognizing Nate and like seeing Nate for like the talent and stuff like that he has. But then it's like it's that idea of like him letting it get to his head too much, and then also it like him feeling threatened because Ted was putting time towards Nate, helping Nate because Nate needed it, and then he felt like Nate was doing well and doing better. So then he started focusing his attention elsewhere, and then that's when Nate started like, having the Nate type
Yeah.
of level that he
And he
did,
was
where he
also
was,
succumbing
you
to
know,
like his own like problems too at the same
yep,
time. Like that
yeah,
was when he
his
was also spiraling. He didn't like have enough energy to address everything in the room.
yep. Yeah, no, it was like I rewatching it, I'm like, okay, they actually did a good job. Like they did it over the course of the whole season, and there was like a lot of hints of like kind of building on stuff that happened in the first season. I'm like, okay, they actually did a pretty solid job of making him into the villain. And I also just, I think what kills me the most about that show is them physically changing his hair color. Like over the course of the whole show, he goes from being
Yeah.
like this young, vibrant, like character in the first season that you're like, oh, that kid's like 22 years old, something like that. So then like the end of the second season, you're like, that's like a 37-year-old grizzled like adult. Like,
Yeah, that it was kind of cool. They like subtly started adding more and more and more like throughout the time.
yeah,
It was well done. It was kind of funny too at the same time. Like, damn, did he like age? Like this go over time, or is like that stressed out at all times? But
yeah, like
yeah,
anybody saw him in the public during the filming of that season and we're like, why the hell, why is he like going gray? Like, what's happening? It's
yeah. Is
like
this
he
like a
is,
flash
yes.
forward scene or something? Like Parks and
Yeah,
Rec style, where they're like 40, like 70 years old or whatever.
yeah,
Yeah, they did such a good job of like that whiplash, like if you're going from like completely like left side of you know, not getting recognized and stuff and starting to appreciate like every little bit, so like every little thing that gets recognition you start to appreciate, and then the total overcorrection of,
yep,
you know, like being super narcissistic, mean and
yep.
stuff when you have the ability to.
Yeah,
But
and
you know,
Ted's like,
inevitably you're gonna end up somewhere here, hopefully.
well,
But
that's what I think like season three is gonna be is like it's like the redemption arc is like his is what season three. And but it's also one of those where like you could also see, like I said, it was also one of those where he put a lot of attention towards Nate in the first season because Nate needed it. And so like if you go back and watch first season, like Nate's with him like at the ball, and Nate's, you know, Nate, he's the date that he brought. Nate's with him at this, like he's constantly with him. And then in the second season, he's not, and then but he's spending a lot of time with like, you know, with Roy, and you know, I'm trying to get Roy to be a coach, and then he gets Roy to be a coach, and then he's spending a lot of time with Jamie, you know, because he's trying to get you know, nurse Jamie into the team. And then like that's when the disconnect starts to occur where he Nate's like getting super jealous. So it's like it's building everything like into that perfect culmination where then at the end it's like he's just fed up.
yeah,
Yeah,
which is
like
that
that
was my favorite.
that scene is one of my favorite scenes ever, where where they're just like, I don't know where he is, and the phone just lights up, and Roy's just there in the dark. Just
Uh,
one of the best. I mean, Roy's just obviously one of the most like comedic timing characters in the show. Like his jokes and everything about him, like everything he says. Like I just love in the first season. The guy who, what's his name? The guy that ends up becoming the team captain. That he gives the team captaincy to.
this
Uh,
is also the same guy that he's like they brought to like the street like
Yes, yeah, the
soccer.
guy in the scene right here.
Ah, what
In
is
the
his
first
name?
season, it's hilarious because in the first season, you know, he tells Jamie to stop picking on, you know, McAdoo.
Isaac.
It's Isaac. He stops Jamie, telling Jamie to stop picking on Nate, and then Jamie walks over to those two guys and tells them, you know, keep doing it. It's funny. But like right before that, Roy just walks over and it's just like he's like Isaac's like, hey Roy, you want to come to the bar? And he's like, "Oh, will you be there?" And Isaac's like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Fuck no, then." I just died. I just love that scene. It's just so great. It's
I
like
have to
so
throw that
blunt.
on the rewatch at this point.
Oh God, it's so like this weekend is probably gonna be me watching that and then The Last of Us. That's probably all I'm gonna do.
Yeah. Yeah, especially if
Oh,
that is actually the finale. But that's yeah, I know. And they're gonna be a weekly release. Where was I getting to with that?
yeah,
Basically,
for
that's in
Ted
a
Lasso
week.
or
Yeah, I was thinking of Ted Lasso at first. I'm just thinking about how much stuff there is in like the next month. It's just absolutely wild.
dude, it's ridiculous.
And I
They
feel like
just
it's
keep
partially because of like the backlog, because of like all like COVID productions and stuff like started like picking up, and now they're all like like spitting them out and everything. But like,
yeah.
man, there's a lot. There's so much to go over,
Well, they're
which is
also
great.
different lanes, you know, like Succession is not very similar to
Yeah,
Ted Lasso, obviously. So it's like they're different. They're in different lanes, so I guess it makes sense, you know, that they're on different services too. So it's like there's competition there, but it does feel like they're like all coming out at once.
yeah. No, it's a beautiful time. There was a time at which every night was, let's see, I think, or no, there was a good period of time where it was Better Call Saul on Sundays,
Mhm.
Barry on Mondays, and I think there might have been one other show. And then there was even a time before that where it was, I think, Breaking Bad and two other shows I think that were premiere at the time. I'm trying to think of them, but there's like eventually you get little pockets, especially it's so much nicer, and I'm sure they plan around this. But like when there's not a lot of sports on to watch, and you just like need something to fill that area and that time with, and all of a
Yep.
sudden they're like, oh great, yeah, this is actually where we're going to premiere like all of our best shows, so you could watch them one day after another, and it's
Yep.
perfect. It's a beautiful time.
Yeah, yeah, it's one of those where I gotta find the time because I'm in, with school and work and all that. It's like I don't have as much time as I used to, and then it's like weekends come and I'm just like, okay, now I'm gonna watch something. But then I like always
Yeah,
want to like watch like movies, which that takes time, and then I want to play games. Not enough time in the world is basically the way it goes. I feel like what's gonna happen is I'm gonna finish nursing school and then I'm just gonna like finally begin catching up on everything that I've missed over the time where it's like, oh yeah, I forgot to watch that, you know. Like I
yeah.
keep talking about how I want to watch Last of Us, but it might be one of those where like I just never end up doing it and then it's like season two's coming out next year or like 2 years from now, and then it's like I'm done with nursing school and I'm like, I should watch that, you know?
Yeah, yeah, where you could watch it in bursts and everything. There's I wish I had like a category of those shows I can keep track of, but I definitely had the same thing where I'm like, oh yeah, no, I'm gonna watch those, and I like made a list, and I made it
Yep.
through some of them, but like if there was always like a premiere shelf of something I want to watch, it's like something else goes in there, takes a spot, and then there's maybe
Yep.
one or two older things, and then it moves along, and like those couple of shows that always just fall just slightly below, and they stick around there for a while. I'm sure there's a
Yep.
lot of them that I have, but
Oh yeah, and that's why I try to make a list. Like I should do the same for shows, like TV shows, because there's so many TV shows. Like I feel like it's worse than movies. Like there's TV shows, there's so many TV shows that come out that I'm like, I need to watch this. But again, the problem is that you watch a movie, it's 2 hours, 2.5 hours.
yeah.
At the longest 3 hours. But you watch a TV show and it's like you at least got to commit 8 hours roughly. Depending on which the show is.
I
So it's just
watched.
like different.
I googled how long it would take for me to catch up to One Piece. Do you want to guess how many days consecutively you have to
Oh
watch?
God. Okay. One Piece, we're talking like 20, 22 minutes an episode.
Hmm.
God, that's just an absurd amount. I would say it's at least like I'm gonna throw a number out there and it could be completely wrong. Is it like 52 days? Something like that?
It's 16, which
16
seems not
days?
bad. 16 days consecutively. Yeah,
I mean consecutively though. That's straight. Like in their 20 something minute episodes.
yeah, and that's I think if you take out the intro or something too. So if you skipped over that 1 or 2 minutes back or whatever.
Yeah.
But
Which by the way, we'll just fully segment into the weeb part of the podcast. Just kidding. I we'll segment into the fact that speaking of anime, um yeah, like watching One Piece is just one of those where I do love anime. Like I've always grown up watching anime, but it's so intimidating. It's just so intimidating. Like even Naruto, like even starting Naruto after like years of it being out, like I was like, oh man, there's so many episodes I gotta watch. And
yeah.
like I got through most of it. Like I didn't finish Shippuden, which is like I need to. I'm not gonna watch Boruto because I've not heard great things, but it's
Hmm.
one of those where I gotta finish that. But like there's so many. Like I know it's good. I know it's probably gonna be good. I'll probably enjoy it. But there's just so many
I
episodes. It's
just
just a commitment that I
I just
can't make right
started
now.
it. I literally just started it. I didn't even look at like the seasons ahead of time. I knew it was a lot, but I was told that I could watch it in the background while doing other things, and I started
Mhm.
doing that, and it was like the perfect amount. I was able to focus on what I was doing, but there was also enough where I was like able to follow the story and still get it in. Because I mean, let's be honest, if I put this in my premiere TV show category, which is like generally where I'm completely like zoned in and watching
Yeah.
100%, I'm gonna be 50 before the time I finish that one because that slot's
No.
really, really, that slot's really, really short, and it doesn't happen a lot. But it worked pretty well. One of the characters left the show, and I immediately texted Danny about it, and I was like, I bet he shows up in 5 episodes. He's like, yeah, try a few years, and I was like, wow, okay. I thought
Yeah.
that was
That's
gonna be like a thing turn around, but they play the long game. Okay.
well. That's because they can because they got 1,000 episodes.
Yeah, but like you don't know you're going to be on the air later on, and then they eventually get to there. So I was thinking
I
like,
guess that's
oh
true.
yeah, classic character leaves, and then like within the end of the season he reappears. He's like, no, try in a few years. I was like, really? Okay, I get it.
Yeah. That's insane. Yeah. It's one of those where I just in my brain I just can't. I can't like do it. I mean, eventually maybe like again once I'm out of nursing school and I'm working 3 4 days a week and I have like 3 4 days because you're working 12-hour shifts.
Yeah,
If I got 3 4 days a week where I'm not doing anything and like yeah it's a show that I can just put on in the background all day while I'm like doing errands, going, and whatever. Like
Yeah.
I'll totally be down, but I just right now there's no way that I can commit to it. And there's just like other things that I want to watch too, so it's like I just can't do it.
Yeah. No, it's there's like premiere slot categories where you're like gonna sit down and watch this, and like that's The Last of Us, that's always gonna be Succession, that's always gonna be Ted Lasso or whatever right
Yeah.
now. But like, yeah, no, I mean it's gonna be a background. It's gonna be a background show for a little bit. And that's fine
Now,
because they have to be there.
now a show that I am watching that I am excited for because we're talking about anime and this never happens all the time and I love it is my favorite anime of all time is Bleach, which right now has been great and still going. And it's one of those where 13 episodes came out. They're doing the final season, 52 episodes. Um, and they're doing 13 episodes, then 13 episodes, then 13, and then 13. So it's
That's
split up
another
into four
that's not
parts.
a season. That's anime silly in that fact.
Well,
52 episodes in a season.
I know. Well,
Damn.
it's because it's an arc. It's the last arc that's being animated is the way that you should put it. So it's like
Yeah.
a bunch. It's a chunk of chapters. I mean, we're talking a couple hundred chapters that are being animated, but it's the final 52 episodes, which actually people said because I think they're doing like 4 to 5 chapters an episode basically is the average.
Hmm.
Um, which people were saying that like like the scare with that is that maybe it's done too quickly. But the first 13 episodes were done like chef's kiss perfect. Like they got everything they needed to do. They added some extra stuff in that was like unnecessary but made it better. The animation is going wild in some episodes.
When does the next
That's
13 batch come out?
July.
Okay.
I believe it's July, mid July, somewhere in that range.
So
And
they're
then they're gonna
breaking
do
it up
13
into different
episode.
time periods where they drop them.
Yeah, so the 13 episodes and it's weekly too.
Okay.
And it releases like on Hulu and I think it releases Monday night in America because it's like Sunday night in Japan.
Hmm.
And I watched the subs because I don't care. I'm fine with reading subtitles. Again, I've watched anime my entire life. I'm fine with reading subtitles. And so they come out on Mondays, and it was 13 weeks. Well, 12 weeks because they what was this is the part that everybody loved is they released episode 12 and 13 at the same time.
Oh, okay. That is kind of nice.
Yeah. So then it was like just a straight hour of the finale, like the final 2 episodes to cap off the first part. Part one of the season of the arc.
And it's exclusively like it drops on streaming, right? Like it's not lively
Yeah.
broadcast or anything like that.
It's one of those where I think it's live broadcast over in Japan, but I don't know how you would get it here, kind of thing. Like you maybe VPN, maybe illegally, I don't know. But it's one of
Yeah.
those where it drops on Hulu the next day, at like 10 a.m. the next day. So it's one of those where like just watch it. Like I get home from work on Monday night and I, have a drink and I watch the new episode and it's and then I watch reactions, people watching the episode because it's like always fun. It's always fun to do that.
When did those last two just come out?
It was right before Christmas, I think. Like I think
Oh,
it
so
was
it's been a little
December.
bit. Okay, I didn't know if this was like last week.
No, the first episode I think came out like in October. Like I think it was like around Halloween is when the first episode came out for
Hmm.
the 13. And then they ran 12 weeks from then. So it was 3 months.
Is Bleach possible for me to catch up on? Or is it
Yes,
also
if
crazy?
Bleach, yes, if you skip the filler.
Okay.
So here's the thing. There's filler arcs and the filler arcs take up probably a good like 35-40% of the series in its whole. Like,
Okay.
here's the thing: the filler arcs are fun. Some of them are better than others. The filler arcs are fun if you like the series and you watched all the canon episodes in their entirety and you enjoyed them. Then you'll probably like the fillers, and you don't have to watch them at any specific time. You can just go back and watch them whenever you want.
Okay. Okay. I see.
Yeah, and every once in a while, a character will get mentioned from the filler episodes, and you're like, "Who's that?" But then when you go watch the filler, you're like, "Oh, that's who they were talking about." Like there's 2 new characters that are side characters. They're like completely side characters. They have like really no importance to the story after the filler, but they're in the canon episodes after the filler takes place. So if
Yeah.
you didn't watch the filler, you're like, "Who are these 2 characters?" But they're like not important enough that like, or 3 characters. They're like not important enough that like they do anything into the canon. So it's like
You don't
you're
need to
like, I don't
know.
know who those are, and then you find out they're from the filler, and you're like, oh, and then they don't do anything. So then you're like, okay, like I guess I'll just disregard that. Like,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
Bleach itself, I don't. You'd have to look up how many episodes are actually canon because I know. I'm trying to think, it's like episodes 1 through 62. I think it's 62, maybe it's 63, and then there's a canon. There's a filler arc, and then it picks back up at like episode 120 or something like that,
That's a long
or
arc.
maybe
Okay.
it's like 110, 111. It's like one of those where like there's like the main canon story runs for like 60, 67 episodes, somewhere in that range. And then the filler arc runs for like 50 episodes, and then the canon runs for another 40 to 50, and then there's another filler arc, and then the canon runs for another 50 to 60, and then there's another filler arc, and then there's another canon arc that runs for like 30 episodes.
It's
So
absolutely wild to me that they would just be like that there are filler arcs in general.
yeah.
That's strange.
So I want to say counting the new episodes, there's somewhere in the range of like 225 episodes that are canon that are all 20 minutes long.
Okay. It's just so interesting that they'd be like, yeah, let's just make like this one's not really gonna matter that much, but like we'll hold on to it. We'll make it.
Well, part of the problem was, and this is the issue with Bleach, and this is why it's such a big deal that it's like coming back. How many episodes of Bleach? 164 episodes of 366 are canon or are filler.
That's
Uh,
nuts.
366 minus 164. So there's 202 episodes that are canon. And
Hmm.
that's of the first portion. And then there's 13 more episodes that just came out. So 202 plus 13 is 215. So yeah, I was right in the ballpark to about 215 episodes that are canon.
Okay. Not impossible
And
then.
Bleach is considered one of the big three. Like it's Naruto, Bleach, One Piece. Those are like the three that like Dragon Ball Z came before. So like people say that that's in the mix. I get it. It's a legend, but Dragon Ball Z came before those. So those are like the big three from that era.
Is there like a current Dragon Ball Z iteration still like airing and
I'm
being
sure there
made?
is. I don't know exactly because I never was a big Dragon Ball Z guy. I watched some of it, like the original. It's fine, it's cool, but it's like
Yeah.
I just never got into it as much. I appreciate it. Like I understand what it did for anime because that's what, led to all of these. And all of these animes, One Piece, Naruto, Bleach, they all have like things from that they pick up on that they use.
Yeah.
So, you always got to give homage to that, but it's one of those where I just never got into it. But Bleach itself is my favorite, and I will talk about it all the time because it is my favorite.
Makes me want to watch
And
it then.
yeah, it's 215 episodes. I mean, it's literally one. I would almost consider it my favorite show, like of all time, just show, like in general, because I just love it so much. And like, yeah, it has the anime cheese that you get, and everything like that. But what's funny is that they don't like the writer wasn't very big on like love stories. So like there's like no like romantic stories happening. I
Huh.
mean, like, there's a character that very clearly loves the main character, and you know that, like, episode three, you know? So,
Yeah.
like, and then, like, it's one of those where, like, certain characters at the very end of the series, like, the last chapter that he wrote of the series is like, and these characters got together. And you're like, oh, cool. You're like, I see how they got together. That's cool, but it's one of those where like there's never like romantic things happening. Like it's always fighting, training arcs, drama, stuff happening.
Yeah. Interesting. So wait, the book or like the manga is done, but like the show has been iterating off of it?
So that was part of the problem was so back when Bleach aired, they caught all the way up to where the manga, that's the way you pronounce it,
Hmm.
was completed. So that's why it stopped airing. It literally ended because they just didn't have any more material. Like they were like, and we've caught up. We're done. And then it sat for 10 years almost or something like that. And in that time period, Taite Kubo, who's the writer, he got sick and he was really sick when he was writing the last arc. So the last arc feels kind of rushed at times, and that it also is like unbelievable at times and is like crazy good at times. And personally, I think it's the best arc of the whole series. but I also like the whole series, so it's one of those where it's not like I hold any of the arcs in like a low esteem.
Yeah.
Um,
Have you read it?
I so the new one I haven't read in its entirety, but I've read most of it.
Okay.
Like there was some parts that I skipped around because I'm impatient, and but I've read most of it, and then I've also like I know everything that happens in it. It's one of those where I'm not like shocked by anything. So seeing it animated is awesome, but that's why they're animating it now is because they finally have decided, okay, let's animate it because the final arc is complete and this is the last arc of Bleach, which then he released a one-off. You know, then Tite Kubo wrote a one-off for like the 20th anniversary of Bleach or something like that. I think it was the 20th anniversary, not long ago.
Yeah.
And when he wrote it, it ended with like the Hell arc, is what it said. And so everybody went, is he writing another one? And then he hasn't said anything yet, but there is some steam around the fact that he might be writing another arc. So we'll see. But right as of right now, the final arc of Bleach was animated. This is what's being animated. And then the best part about it is they are not censoring it. And oh my god. It is
Is it like
brutal.
super gory for the most part?
There's just parts where at one point you won't know if I tell you now because you're going to watch from the beginning of Bleach and you wouldn't know until you get there. There is a part in the new arc where like to give you an example, in the old arc in the manga, there is a part where a character, a bad guy, rips off the arm of one of the other characters and then like or what is it? Or no, the main character, the good character rips off the arm of the other character and then hits him with it and then throws it at him during the
Uh-huh.
fight.
Uh-huh.
In the show, they show him cutting off the guy's arm. They don't really show any of the blood or anything, and then that's it. He doesn't have the arm. Instead, he throws like a big rock.
Okay.
Like another character loses his arm in the battle, and his arm gets slashed off and
Yeah.
it's bloody and everything like that. In the manga, he like when it happens and you're like, "Oh my god, did he just cut off his arm?" They show him again and his arm is just like all bruised and beaten up and it's just like kind of limp at his side, like it's like, "Oh, he broke it pretty bad." It's like
Yeah.
they hide it. They hide it a lot. Whereas in the new one, there's a scene where like there's two dudes, there's like this creature loose and there's these two dudes that are looking up and they're like marveling at another character and they're like, wow, look at that character, and then all of a sudden their heads just go and their heads just like from here like down get cut in half and their heads just start peeling off and like the blood's going and it's just out of nowhere, like it does, there's no warning, like it just happens
Sick.
and and it just like that's and they don't block it out at all. Like it's one of those where they are not censoring it and it's great.
So the previous where the arm was ripped off was censored because
Yes,
why?
because I guess it was airing on TV. I guess they were
Oh,
censoring it. I
okay.
don't know.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Love that.
Whereas this new arc, they were like, we're not censoring it, and
Okay.
so and then this is what's happened, and it's like scenes like that are occurring that you're like, you know,
Yeah. Have you watched
like they
Attack on
just,
Titan?
huh?
Have you watched Attack on Titan?
Yes, I haven't watched any. I haven't
Oh
watched
yeah, you
any
said
of
this.
season 4 yet, but or season 5, whatever the newest one was. That's like part 1, part 2 has come out. I haven't watched those, but I've
Okay.
watched all the way up to then.
Is it more or less gory than that? Because I've been
It's
told
about
it's
the same.
gory.
They brought it
Okay.
to the same level.
Okay. Cool.
So like there's times where like there's one character that's awesome in the new arc, who he's a bad guy, but he's just he has this ability that's called like, oh fuck, what is it called? I'm gonna forget. It's like Blaze Finger or something. I forget what it is. I gotta remember. But he literally just like turns and just goes like this and like fires, and it like literally just like then it flashes to the person and their head just explodes. It's just like that's amazing.
Blaze Finger. Okay. I remember
It's
that
like
then.
something like that where he just like fires it, like he fires like a it's like a blast of energy and it's like you don't really see the blast of energy.
Yeah.
But then Bleach is great because then there's times like in the new arc there's like a dude that's just straight up has a gun and like he fires like energy blasts like in the thing, like I call them energy blasts, they're spiritual pressure like things, but you'll learn that when you watch the show. But it literally he's got a gun. Like he's literally just has a Glock. And he's like an older guy with glasses with like blonde hair, and he's a bad guy, and he just like has a Glock, and you're like, cool. You're like,
Scary.
all right,
Yeah.
like awesome. But anyways, yeah, the show is very good. I mean, it was made, the older when you watch it, you'll see like the older episodes are like the first, you know, 30 episodes are like, really animated, like to where you're like, oh, this is old, you know.
Yeah.
But then it picks up, and then like by the end of the canon episodes, it's great. And then there's like some twists that are crazy that happen. There's like, Bleach is great for like its character, and then it also has like they always do themes for their characters. So like the bad guys of every like there's two main groups of bad guys that occur,
Yeah.
and the two groups that occur, the first group that you encounter that encompasses like a lot, like the first like 100 episode, like the 100 episodes maybe, is like Spanish. So they all have Spanish names. They all speak in like Spanish terms at times. And then like the new arc that's being animated is all German. And it's like very like Nazi level, like,
Yeah.
like it's supposed to
Nice.
be an allegory for them and everything. But it's so like the characters all speak German. They all have German names. Like,
Interesting.
yeah, like the bad guys are called like the Van der Reich.
Oh, okay. That's on the nose.
Yeah,
I
that's
like
what I
that.
mean. It's like they're all like yeah, and it's so they have themes, and it's pretty cool because then the music kind of plays with that too. And it's just I like I said, I just love the show. It's just it's my favorite all anime of all time.
Yeah.
So
Well,
and
add to the list, I suppose. That is a
I've
lot.
rewatched all of those canon episodes maybe 6 or 7 times,
Okay.
maybe more.
Yeah, I noticed you mentioned that. I was like, oh, it can't be that much of the show then, but it is. So,
Yeah, 215 episodes roughly if you count the new ones.
ooh.
Yeah, and then you watch the new ones, and then the new episodes. Like if you watch the old episodes, they're good, but then you watch the new episodes and their animation, and you're like, damn, they put a lot of effort into these animation.
Yeah, since One Piece started in like 1998 or whatever, it's I mean, you can kind of tell, but it doesn't really take me out at all. It doesn't like bother
That's
me
how
if
that's how Bleach is. Like in the beginning, you're like, yeah, this is old, but it doesn't like it's not bad. Like it's still not terrible, but it's like, yeah, this is old.
yeah, which is, good because you're not paying attention to that part so much at all. Anyways,
Yeah.
the story is part of it. But yeah.
Yes, I would highly recommend. Bleach is literally my favorite of all time. So if you do watch it, I would absolutely fangirl over having conversations with you about it. So because I
Yeah.
love it so much. So
All right. Is it all on Hulu? Maybe. Probably.
yeah, it's
Okay.
all on
Cool.
Hulu, sub and dub, so you can really watch it either way. And what's kind of nice is the dub, the actors actually kind of go hard. So like, especially like the character who plays the dub of Ichigo, the main character, like that dude goes ham. So the dub's actually not bad. Like it's actually pretty good, but like both are fine. So it's like you could pick your poison, but they're both on Hulu, and the new episodes for the new season are too.
Oh, okay. And they use the same actor throughout, probably.
Yes, and I think the actor there's like one actor that played an older character that died since the new season has come out, so they had to replace him.
Yeah.
But the guy they replaced him for actually did like a really good job. So, but
Nice.
anyways, yeah. So the dub are totally fine to watch if you don't want to like the effort of having the like it's totally fine. Like they do a good job.
Okay. Yeah. No, I'll probably start that one then too as a side one. But all right, I say we probably wrap it up. What do you think?
Yeah. Oh
I'm
yeah,
starting to
yeah. I think
contain yawning as well.
I know I'm like hitting a point where I'm like fading into the chair where I'm just like, all right,
Yeah.
I'm gonna die.
I'm
Also, by the way,
slouching.
if you're really interested, there's like 4 Bleach movies too that are not canon. So
Oh, they're not. They're filler.
yeah, there's also a live action Bleach movie that Netflix released. That's
Oh,
you know,
nice. I know they're
it's
doing the same
okay.
thing with One Piece as well. That's why I think I initially saw it.
Yeah, there's a live action Bleach movie. It's all right. I've seen it.
Is it new?
Fine. Yeah, it was released like 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
Okay, new enough. Yeah.
Yeah. It
Interesting.
actually has Asian characters in it, which is it's an
That's
improvement
nice.
for Netflix.
Yeah.
They've had issues with that in the past,
They were like, "This is
aka
Todd.
Death
He's
Note.
from a local. He's from a local Ohio suburb."
Well, it's literally Death Note where they were like, yeah, we know that this is in Japan, but we're gonna make them all white. Same with Dragon Ball Z when they did that.
They did Dragon Ball Z in live action?
Yes, they did,
Okay,
Dylan. Yes,
cool.
they did. You should go
I
and
probably
check
it
it
sounds like I
out.
didn't
It's
really need to know that anyways.
comedy. It's what it
It was
is.
skip. Okay.
All right. Well, we gotta end it, but
All
all right.
right.
Well, it was a
Next
good time.
Tuesday.
Good to get back into it. We'll be back next Tuesday. We'll have some more teases into my draft wish list now that literally it'll be the day before. So, some of the players I talk about, hopefully deals will be announced with them. But either way, we'll be back next Tuesday. Talk more draft. Talk more random crap that we decided to come up with and talk about.
Hmm.
And yeah,
All right.
that's it for me.
Sounds good. I will stop it then.